Chapter 554. 2 days ago, Yang Huan, who had just returned from her hometown and started her risky graduation trip with Ding Xiang, came to the mountains of Xiangxi. To be precise, Ding Xiang's hometown was a remote mountain in Tush Village, Yenya County, Mauda City, Xiangxi Province. It was a tough trip to her home. Yang Huan and Ding Xiang first took the train to the city, then took a 5-hour bus ride to Yenya County. Because of the twists and turns on the mountain road, it was very difficult to travel on the national highway. When they arrived at Yenya County, Ding Xiang told Yang Huan that she used to walk back slowly when she was still studying. But now, there was a road that led to Tush Village. Ding Xiang and Yang Huan took a 3-wheeled bus, which was a large compartment connected to a motorbike, and arrived at Tush Village. The passenger car was still open, and it ate dust and dirt along the way. The two girls were covered in dust and dirt. But fortunately, Yang Huan could accept it. She came from a village, and this was her normal situation. Therefore, she joked with Ding Xiang, "Sister Ding Xiang, I realize that although our hometown is also a village, there are some differences. My hometown is in the basin, but yours is in the mountains." After arriving at Tush Village, Ding Xiang and Yang Huan found a small hotel to stay in because night had fallen. They rested for the night, had breakfast the next morning, bought some buns, and continued their journey. The rest of the journey was a big challenge for Yang Huan. She had to walk with Ding Xiang on the steep mountain road. They crossed 3 mountains and arrived at the foot of Ding Xiang's Miao Stockade village after noon. They still had to climb up the stone stairs that were as dangerous as a stairway to heaven. Although the scenery along the way was beautiful, and the higher they climbed, the more they could see through the gaps of the forest and see the verdant mountains in the distance. However, Yang Huan was not in the mood to look around. She only wanted to reach Ding Xiang's home as soon as possible and have a good rest. After 2 days and 1 night, Yang Huan and Ding Xiang finally arrived home when the sun was about to set and the sun was about to set. There was nothing particularly surprising about it. It was a poor and underdeveloped village with old buildings. Other than the wooden structures, everything else was similar to the poor and shabby Wudayaku village in Yang Huan's memory when he was very young. Of course, Wudayaku village was much better now. Even without Yang Yi, the villagers lived in brick houses. With Yang Yi, they were moving toward a happy and well-off life. However, the people of Baiyao Stronghold were still very enthusiastic. When they saw Ding Xiang and Yang Huan, they all greeted them in Miao language. Some of the children in the stronghold also ran up to Yang Huan and looked at her curiously. Their bright black eyes still had the liveliness of their age. "Hello." Although Yang Huan was very tired, she still happily took out some candies from her backpack and gave them to the children. She learned it from her brother. Every time Yang Yi returned to his hometown, he would bring candy to the children in the village. "Uncle and Grandma asked me where you are from. I told them that you are my classmate and that you are here to play. They were very happy and said that you are welcome." Ding Xiang helped Yang Huan translate the Miao language. "Thank you. Thank you, uncles, aunts, grandpas, and grannies." Yang Huan quickly replied and nodded gratefully. The villagers of Miao village continued talking enthusiastically. Ding Xiang translated. "Everyone said that they didn't prepare anything because they didn't tell you in advance. It's too rude. Then, they invited you to their house for dinner and killed a chicken to welcome you. So enthusiastic." Yang Huan was flattered. However, if everyone wanted to invite her to their house for dinner, how could she be in 2 places at the same time? "Why don't we forget about it? I think everyone has a hard life. It's not easy to raise chickens and ducks. I'll go to your house and eat something simple." Yang Huan calmed down. She had been through hard times, so she was considerate. Ding Xiang thought so too. However, the enthusiasm of the uncles and grannies was a tradition in their village, so she was too embarrassed to remind Yang Huan. Now that Yang Huan had tactfully declined, Ding Xiang helped Yang Huan organize the words to persuade the villagers. Back at Ding Xiang's house, Yang Huan met Ding Xiang's granny. After recovering, the granny was still in good health. Although her back was hunched and her ears were not as good, she still planted vegetables and raised chickens in the small field behind the village. She was self-sufficient and tried not to trouble others. Ding Xiang's granny also talked a lot with Yang Huan. Even Ding Xiang could not understand some of the words and could not translate them. After sitting with the granny for a while, Ding Xiang was busy preparing dinner. She and Yang Huan only had a few buns in the afternoon and were already hungry. I can't make a call. There's no signal in the mountain. Sister Ding Xiang, let me help you. Yang Huan took out her phone and wanted to inform Yang Yi that she was safe. When she saw Ding Xiang cooking, she wanted to help. Ding Xiang could not persuade her. You've been climbing the mountain for a day. You must be tired. You should take a rest. Ding Xiang's pot was taken away by Yang Huan, so she had to use a wooden basin to wash the vegetables. If you want to make a call, you have to go back to the village. There's no signal tower here. I forgot to tell you. It's okay. We'll talk about it tomorrow. I was tired when I climbed up, but after seeing so many enthusiastic villagers, I don't feel tired anymore. Yang Huan smiled and said while washing the rice, Sister Ding Xiang, your physical fitness is better than mine. I've been practicing martial arts since I was young, but my physical fitness is not as good as yours. After climbing the mountain for a day, you're still not tired. I'm used to it. Yang Huan chatted with Ding Xiang. But then again, the situation in your hometown is worse than I thought. I used to think that our hometown was very poor because it was so remote. But I didn't expect that your hometown was even poorer than when we were at our poorest. At least there were roads in our hometown, but on this mountain, there's no possibility of building roads at all. Ding Xiang sighed softly and said, Yes, I used to think that after I studied, I would be able to find a way to let the villagers in the village live a good life. But now... Ding Xiang couldn't continue. The frustrated expression on her face said it all. You can't change anything. You can only go out, Yang Huan said softly as she thought of her experience after leaving the village. Ding Xiang smiled and said, Yes, but it's hard to change the minds of the older generation. We can only place our hopes on the younger generation. I also hope that my brothers and sisters will have the chance to go out of the mountain and see the outside world like me. Studying is the best way to change one's fate. Yang Huan was not the same as she was half a year ago. With more experience, Yang Huan had a deeper understanding of how studying could change one's fate. We used to have a school in the mountain. It was built by an old grandpa who passed away a long time ago. Later, the village sent us a private teacher named Tao Shuping. I learned how to read and count from Grandpa Tao. Grandpa Tao didn't know English, but he was really responsible and taught us the basic knowledge patiently. Until one day, Grandpa Tao told me that Ding Xiang should go back to the village to study in middle school. That way you can learn more. Ding Xiang seemed to be reminiscing as she told Yang Huan about the past. With Grandpa Tao's help, Ding Xiang walked out of the village. However, when she was in high school, Grandpa Tao's health deteriorated and he passed away. Nevertheless, he still left some money for her to finish high school. Ding Xiang had to work and save up for the rest of the journey. She slowly made her way out by herself. What happened next? What happened to the school after Grandpa Tao passed away? Yang Huan asked, wiping the tears from the corner of her eyes. Her eyes were brimming with tears. After Grandpa Tao left, the school was once again abandoned. Although a few civilian teachers came one after another, not all of them had the same selfless dedication as Grandpa Tao. All of them were frightened by the hardships of White Potion Stronghold. The longest one stayed there for 2 weeks before all of them ran away. Ding Xiang wanted to finish high school and come back to teach, but the uncles and grandmas in the village didn't agree. They said that Ding Xiang was the first university student in the village and had to go back to school. She wanted to set an example for the children. Then what should we do? Another generation won't have the chance to study, Yang Huan said worriedly. It's fine. It's fine now. Ding Xiang smiled. Last winter, when Ding Xiang returned home, not only did she bring her grandmother down the mountain to see a doctor, but she also went to the village and found a solution to the lack of teachers willing to come to the village to teach the children. She personally paid for the private teachers and used money to keep them. She even hired 2 teachers to take turns teaching on the mountain. This solved the problem of not being able to reunite with their families for years on the mountain. Yang Huan was shocked when she heard Ding Xiang's story. No wonder. Sister Ding Xiang, I was wondering why you were so reluctant to spend money. Yang Huan looked at Ding Xiang and said, touched. That's right, everything makes sense now. Previously, Yang Huan and Guazi had been wondering why Ding Xiang was reluctant to spend the high salary that Yang Yi gave her. She couldn't even afford to buy herself a new set of clothes. She usually wore the same old clothes. Yang Huan was different. Although she didn't spend lavishly, she wasn't as poor as before after her family situation improved. She was willing to spend the money she needed. Usually, when she asked Ding Xiang to go shopping for clothes, Ding Xiang would always reject her. She even took out the clothes that Mo Fei gave her before and said to Yang Huan, I have so many new clothes that I can't even wear them all. That's right. Guazi once suggested to Ding Xiang that she get a loan to buy a house in Jiangqing. It was a profitable investment, but Ding Xiang didn't agree to it. It turned out that all the money she saved was used here. Chapter 555. However, Ding Xiang was too eager to let the children in the village get a good basic education that she ignored the evils of human nature. Or rather, she didn't dare to think in a bad direction after knowing that there was a way to let the teachers go up the mountain. After dinner, Yang Huan accompanied Ding Xiang to visit the children who were still in school. Ding Xiang was completely dumbfounded when they heard that the children and villagers doubtfully said that there were no teachers teaching them and that the children were back to their original state of being unsupervised. How could this be? Ding Xiang said in disbelief, I saw the photos they sent me. Weren't my brother and sister still in school? Oh, it was the same for the first month. The 2 teachers took turns to come, but then it was the same as before. The teachers stopped coming. How could the teachers stay in a poor place like ours? A villager said to Ding Xiang. But something was wrong. Last month, when Ding Xiang called the village, why did the village education unit official tell Ding Xiang that the children were doing well and had improved a little compared to before? It was worth mentioning that Ding Xiang had decided to fork out her own money to increase her teacher's allowance. She did not tell the elders in the stronghold about it because she knew that if she did, the simple villagers in the stronghold would not be willing to make so many sacrifices for her. That was also why Ding Xiang hadn't been informed by anyone in the village for half a year without a teacher. Wait, you still gave them the money? Sister Ding Xiang, I remember you said that you send money to the village every month? On the way back, Yang Huan stared at Ding Xiang, who was in a daze, and asked. Ding Xiang's expression was bleak as she gently nodded. Oh, I know. It must be those corrupt officials in your village who took the money. Yang Huan immediately patted the wooden wall and said anxiously, Sister Ding Xiang, I've heard about this many times. It was the same in our county. Because we were poor and the country helped the poor, there was no way for the money to be given to us farmers. It was all taken by those officials. Yang Huan almost guessed the truth. Tush village was even poorer than Zhui town. The 4,000 yuan that Ding Xiang sent back every month, after deducting the necessary living expenses and school fees, was almost equal to the salary of several civil servants in such a poor place. It was definitely a huge sum of money. This sum of money was placed in front of these officials who were afraid of poverty. How could they not be tempted? What's more, the teachers of White Yao stronghold would run away one after another, but that position was still allocated by the government. It was just like the donkey in Donkey Gets Water. The teachers who ran away would still receive a monthly stipend, but who would receive it? The answer had been obvious for a long time. It could be said that even if Ding Xiang did not give the money, no teachers would come to White Yao stronghold. This was because the money was easy to take. And now, Ding Xiang had foolishly transferred money over. With such a huge sum of money, would the greedy people let go of this money because of their conscience? How could this be? Therefore, the people from the education unit made use of the fact that Bai Yao stronghold was unable to communicate with each other and set up a plan to deceive everyone. In the beginning, they did hire 2 private teachers to go up the mountain to teach the children, and all the photos were taken in advance. But the good times did not last long. Ding Xiang continued to go back to Zhongqing to teach and work, and the two private teachers took turns teaching. Before they could even think of running away, these people could not wait to dismiss the two teachers with fabricated reasons. Then, they hired another teacher to go up the mountain to teach, but the salary was very low. That teacher ran away after a few days and did not want the salary. Later, they were too lazy to act, and no more teachers went up the mountain. They used the old photos to trick Ding Xiang, and even urged Ding Xiang to transfer the money over every month. As for what would happen if Ding Xiang found out, they did not care too much. Now that they had the money, they would get it first. If Ding Xiang found out and did not give them the money, they would have gotten enough. Of course, Yang Huan and Ding Xiang did not know that much. But the next day, before dawn, Ding Xiang and Yang Huan could not wait to go down the mountain and find the two private teachers. They knew that when the two teachers worked, they only received a meager basic salary and not as much as Ding Xiang said. These officials couldn't even bear to give money to these teachers when they were putting on an act. Ding Xiang could not hold it in any longer. When the sun was about to set, she and Yang Huan blocked the door of the village's education department, and happened to block the director, Wang Desheng. Under Ding Xiang's questioning, Wang Desheng pushed up his glasses and said unhurriedly, "Comrade Ding Xiang, don't be anxious. Let's talk slowly." Not only did Wang Desheng not feel ashamed, he even denied what they had done and pushed the blame to the remote and desolate Baiyao stronghold. "Even the teachers are not willing to go up the mountain. What do you expect us to do? We are also trying our best to find teachers for you. Don't worry, there will definitely be teachers. Our village attaches great importance to the education of the children in Baiyao stronghold," Wang Desheng said in a bureaucratic tone. Yang Huan was full of anger. She clenched her fists and asked, "Why did you lie to her and say that the teachers are still there and that the students' results are improving? The children in the stronghold are not going to school." "Comrade, don't talk nonsense if you don't understand. You have to take responsibility for your words. Our village sincerely hopes that every child can receive an education, but there is a shortage of teachers now. The children can only study by themselves. Once we solve the problem, there will naturally be teachers to teach them." Wang Desheng beat around the bush and did not answer Yang Huan's question at all. "Then what about her money? You didn't hire teachers for the stronghold. Return the money." Yang Huan's body was trembling. Anger was boiling in her chest. "Money." Comrade Ding Xiang volunteered to donate it to the village. "Although we can't use it in Baiyao stronghold, it is indeed shining and helping the children in other poor villages to study. We still have to thank Comrade Ding Xiang. But don't worry, we will definitely hire teachers for Baiyao stronghold next semester. We will not let the children go without books. We are doing this for the good of the children, don't you think so?" Wang Desheng looked at Ding Xiang with a smile as if he was looking at a mountain of gold. "Yes, my ass." Ding Xiang's expression was still gloomy. She did not know how to rebuke or defend herself. Finally, Yang Huan could not take it anymore. Sister Huan angrily reprimanded Wang Desheng and he fell to the ground with a punch. Similar to the punch that Guazi landed on Tang Kaitai's eye, Yang Huan also punched Wang Desheng's eye, but the strength was different. Yang Huan had been practicing Hong Quan since she was young. Although she was very tired and her limbs were weak, the punch that was enhanced by her anger was like a fierce tiger dashing down the mountain. KO with one punch. Wang Desheng was knocked to the ground and fainted. "Ah! Someone hit me!" A woman from the education department screamed. She yelled and asked the village guards to arrest Yang Huan. Fortunately, Ding Xiang came back to her senses. She quickly pulled Yang Huan, who was still angrily scolding Wang Desheng, and escaped. After calming down, Yang Huan realized that she seemed to have gotten into trouble. There was even the sound of police sirens outside. In this place, it was someone else's territory. The village officials were like local tyrants. Ding Xiang also didn't know anyone. If she was caught, she wouldn't be able to call out to the heavens and the earth. Yang Huan and Ding Xiang hid, not daring to go back to the hotel. Then, they called Yang Yi and told him about the situation. Fortunately, there was a signal in the village. After hearing the whole story, Yang Yi did not blame Yang Huan, nor did he panic. Instead, he calmly said to them, "Don't go back to the village first. Let's find a way. You two go to the city first. They will never guess that not only did you not run home, you ran out instead. Then, wait for me in the city. I'll come over now. As for how to deal with it, we'll talk about it when I get there." Sister Huan and Sister Ding Xiang are in trouble. "I'll go too." Guazi had heard the commotion. He did not even remove his makeup. He anxiously went to Yang Yi's side and said. Yang Yi was still holding a prop gun in his right hand. He gently poked Guazi's chest and said, "What are you going to do? What can you do? Are you worried that I can't solve it?" Yang Yi was still wary of Guazi. He was afraid that he would play a hero to save the damsel in distress and make his sister so touched that she would marry him. That would not do. Moreover, Yang Yi had never thought of using Guazi's father's power. He probably already had a way to solve the problem, a non-violent way. "I'm also worried about Sister Ding Xiang and Sister Huan. Big brother Yang, please let me go with you. If the two of us go together, we can take care of each other." Guazi pleaded pitifully. Chapter 556. In the end, Yang Yi brought Guazi with him. Although he was wary of Guazi, it was his natural reaction as a big brother to protect his little sister. However, Yang Yi had no prejudice against Guazi, and the two were still good friends. Taking the earliest flight, Yang Yi and the others arrived at the city closest to Mao Ta City. However, there was no airport in Mao Ta City, so Yang Yi and the others had to take a few hours' car from a neighboring city to reach their destination. At this time, Yang Huan and Ding Xiang had already arrived in the city. When Yang Yi and the others went to find them, the two girls were staying in a hotel, anxiously waiting for Yang Yi's arrival. "Brother!" Ding Xiang opened the door. Yang Huan got down from the bed in surprise and jogged a few steps. However, she stopped feeling guilty and lowered her head, not knowing what to say. She felt that she had caused a lot of trouble, and even caused her brother to come all the way to Mao Ta City. "Good. That's good." Yang Yi took the lead and walked in. He patted Yang Huan's head and smiled at Ding Xiang. "Don't worry about anything else. I'll find a way to solve the problem for you." Ding Xiang saw Guazi coming out from behind Yang Yi. She was stunned. "Why are you here?" "I'm here to help," Guazi said with a grin. His smile eased the tension in the hotel room. "I was wondering why you were so stupid to give money to those vermin. Then, without supervision for more than a semester, you only realized it now." Ding Xiang pursed her lips, and her face darkened. This incident was a big blow to her. She had come with a passionate heart to help her hometown, but she did not expect to encounter such a disgusting thing. "Lil Gua, don't mention it," Yang Huan said unhappily. "No, what I mean is, Sister Ding Xiang, you shouldn't be so careless. You should at least discuss it with us. There are many ways to solve the education problem in your village," Guazi quickly said. "I'm just concerned about Sister Ding Xiang. From Ding Xiang's point of view, what she did was not wrong. Moreover, this is a great contribution. But little Gua is right. Ding Xiang, this is such a big matter. Why didn't you discuss it with us? You shouldered everything on your own. You don't treat us as friends at all." Yang Yi tried to smooth things over with a smile. Ding Xiang blushed and hurriedly waved her hands. No one knew if she was denying the greatness of her contribution or denying Yang Yi's claim that she didn't treat them as friends. "Hey, big brother, you don't know how remote Sister Ding Xiang's home is. It takes almost a day to walk from the village to her village. She has to climb the mountain on foot. So, many problems are not as simple as you think." Yang Huan could not help but speak up for Ding Xiang. "Let's not talk about that. Let bygones be bygones. Little Gua and I are here to solve the problem for you. Not only to solve the problem of those who are greedy for Ding Xiang's money, but also to solve the problem of education in the village that you are most concerned about, Yang Yi said. Ding Xiang looked at Yang Yi in disbelief and said, "Can it really be solved? How can the children go to school?" "I don't know yet, but there are professionals who can help you." Yang Yi smiled. Because they still had to wait for others, Yang Yi and Guazi checked into a hotel room next to Yang Huan and Ding Xiang. "By the way, how did you escape?" Guazi asked Ding Xiang curiously. "That Wang Desheng should be one of the local bullies in your village. It should be easy for him to find you if you took a bus, right? Teacher Li helped us. She has a car at home that is used to transport goods. She secretly sent us out and took a bus when we reached the county," Ding Xiang said. "Who is Teacher Li?" Guazi asked, puzzled. "Teacher Li Yongheng. She is one of the 2 private teachers that Wang Desheng hired. Later, he found an excuse to fire her. But Teacher Li is a good person," Yang Huan said. "A male teacher?" Guazi didn't know why he suddenly asked. He felt a little jealous. "Not a male teacher. She is a female teacher, okay?" Yang Huan couldn't help but laugh. "But really, Li Yongheng sounds like a man's name. But Li Yongheng is really a woman. And I admire her. She used to be a female teacher, but she could climb so far to teach children." Zhu Luyan arrived the next day. Yang Yi and Zhu Luyan had been in contact because he donated money to the Dream Primary School Project every month. No, it was now called Hope Primary School Project. However, they hadn't seen each other for more than a year. Perhaps it was because Zhu Luyan often went to the mountains, but her skin was darker and thinner than a year ago. "Let me introduce you. This is Zhu Luyan." Before Yang Yi could finish, he paused and thought about how to introduce Zhu Luyan. He was wondering if he should talk about Zhu Luyan's identity. At that moment, Guazi said in surprise, "I remember now. Zhu Luyan, you were one of the top 10 most outstanding young men in the country last year. I even read about you in the newspaper." Guazi had a good memory. He looked at Zhu Luyan with admiration and said, "For your girlfriend, you gave up your life and job in the capital. Then, you threw yourself into the rural education industry. Your Hope Primary School Project gave many children in the remote mountains the opportunity to study." Zhu Luyan was stunned for a moment. She shook hands with Guazi and smiled. "You flatter me. I'm not as great as what the newspaper said. I only did some ordinary things." As for the Hope Primary School Project, Brother Yang Yi also contributed money and effort. He was the one who came up with the name. Zhu Luyan didn't tell Guazi that the honor of being one of the top 10 was actually pushed by the family behind her. If she had a choice, she wouldn't want this title. It was too fake. "But this meaningful project was initiated by you. I just moved my lips and helped you change the name of the Dream Primary School Project to Hope Primary School Project." Yang Yi smiled and said, "Little Gua is right. You did do something practical and meaningful." However, their conversation still surprised Guazi, Yang Huan, and Ding Xiang. Especially Guazi. He vaguely knew about Zhu Luyan's background, but he didn't expect such a person to be related to Yang Yi. Guazi felt that he was a tiger pretending to be a pig. On the surface, he looked harmless and was just an ordinary fatty. However, in fact, he had a strong background and was the son of an official. But now, it seemed that Brother Yang was even more unfathomable. On the surface, he had a military background. Not only the Southwest Military Region, but the big shots in the Jiangnan Military Region were also said to have a good relationship with Yang Yi. Otherwise, why would they allow soldiers' assault to be filmed in the Jiangnan Military Region? Now, he knew a big shot that he couldn't afford to offend. In contrast, Brother Yang was the real tiger pretending to be a pig. However, Zhu Luyan was different from other rich kids. He didn't like to be polite. After some small talk, he began to discuss countermeasures with Yang Yi. "The problem with Wang Desheng and the others is easy to solve. Before I came here, I already called the Shaanxi Provincial Education Department. They will help to investigate and deal with any problems," Zhu Luyan said casually. This was a serious problem for Yang Huan and Ding Xiang, but Zhu Luyan didn't think it was a problem at all. They were just small officials in a small town. In their eyes, they were too insignificant. Moreover, they were in the right, so there was no need for them to use illegal means. They just needed to give an order from the top to let the people from the Discipline Inspection Department investigate, arrest, and punish a few corrupt officials according to procedures and objective facts. What was so difficult about that? Ding Xiang and Yang Huan looked at each other. They didn't expect the problem to be solved so easily. Little Zhu, the main problem is how to let the children in the village have a school. Think of a way, or set up a Hope Primary School in Baiyao village. Set it up. I can bear the cost, Yang Yi said. Let's go and do a field investigation first. Zhu Luyan smiled and said, without investigation, we have no right to speak. Chapter 557. Yang Yi didn't stay in Xiangxi for too long. Zhu Luyan's connections were still strong. In just 2 days, Wang Desheng and the other related personnel had been investigated. The only pity was that the money that Ding Xiang had donated previously had been squandered away. Although they could still get some of it back, it was impossible to return it to Ding Xiang. However, Ding Xiang wasn't sad because it was a blessing in disguise. Although she had lost her money, with the help of Yang Yi and Zhu Luyan, Baiyao Village's Hope Primary School was reopened. It used the original location of the primary school, but it was funded by the Hope Primary School project. They invited teacher Li Yongheng, who was willing to teach, and 2 other private teachers from the village to teach the children. Moreover, the Hope Primary School project would regularly invite some university volunteers to interact with the children and help them broaden their horizons. Ding Xiang didn't need to use her own money to subsidize the school anymore. Yang Yi had paid for it. Of course, Yang Yi also told Ding Xiang that if Ding Xiang really earned money in the future, she was welcome to donate to the Hope Primary School project. This was his personal charity. It was worth mentioning that the Hope Primary School project was now very big. Not only did Yang Yi donate a little money every month, but after it became famous, the donations from society had also increased a lot. Zhu Luyan and the rest also had more ability to help more children. Guazi really couldn't help much throughout the entire process because he was sick. This guy was still too stubborn. With his physical fitness, it was impossible for him to climb up the mountain. However, he still puffed himself up at his own cost. No, he was a fatty to begin with. After forcing himself to climb up the mountain, Guazi collapsed from exhaustion. While Yang Yi and the rest were busy surveying the terrain and analyzing countermeasures, little comrade Gua was lying on the bed, comfortably enjoying Ding Xiang's care. Of course, Guazi wasn't so thick-skinned. He struggled to promise Ding Xiang that when he returned to River Town, he would definitely get someone to send a batch of books, stationery, school bags, and so on to the children in the village. He wasn't here to be a burden. He would definitely make his own contributions. Yang Yi left with Guazi first because they still had to go back to shoot the movie. They had already delayed the crew for a few days, so they could not continue to be carefree outside. Ding Xiang waited for a few more days. After confirming that there would be no more problems this time, she left with peace of mind. She and Yang Huan set off again. According to their original plan, they were going to the capital as extras to gain experience. When Yang Yi and the others left, the sound of people studying in White King's stronghold could already be heard clearly. This little stronghold nestled deep in the mountains seemed to radiate with a joyous vitality. Time passed by quickly, and July passed by amidst all sorts of disturbances. The filming of The Fugitive went relatively smoothly. Even though it was delayed for a few days because of Yang Yi's incident, Du Yuanlei took the opportunity to film the scenes without Ludi, so the progress wasn't delayed. It was estimated that the filming would be completed by mid-August. There was progress on the copyright transfer of Yang Yi's other work, Prison Break. Wolf TV station showed enough sincerity. Not only did they present their filming plan to Yang Yi's negotiation team, they also offered a good profit-sharing condition. To show their sincerity, they also sent a team to visit China, including the director who would be directing Prison Break, Paulton Yi. The director was very interested in Prison Break, and he wanted to meet Yang Yi face-to-face so that he could understand the original author's thoughts and restore the details of the story to the greatest extent. Polton E? With the surname E, he's Chinese, right? Yang Yi curiously asked Lu Benji, who came to tell him the news. Yang Yi was not familiar with the directors in this world. He knew a little about the domestic directors, but as for the foreign directors, he only knew a few names that often appeared in the newspapers. He did not pay much attention to the rest. Yes, Mr. E is an American Chinese, but he looks more like a Caucasian. It is said that his mother is German. Lu Benji looked at his notebook and reported. What's his background? What works has he filmed? Yang Yi was more concerned about this question. Lu Benji told Yang Yi that director Polton E actually had a lot of works. There were movies and TV series. His masterpiece was Criminal Thoughts, a famous crime drama. It mainly told the story of a police team composed of behavioral analysis experts. They used their psychological knowledge to analyze the thoughts of criminals and solve difficult cases. I seem to have heard of this TV series. It's quite famous, and it seems to have won a lot of awards. Yang Yi's memory was triggered. He seemed to have seen the introduction of this TV series. Yes, this TV series has won a lot of awards after it started filming, including the highest award in the TV industry, the Emmy Award. Lu Benji said to Yang Yi. This means that Polton E does have some real talent. Moreover, he is filming a crime drama. It should be easier for him to film Prison Break. Yang Yi was interested in him. He decided to watch his TV series before meeting him. He wanted to see if he could meet his expectations. In August, Backwave's Facebook launched a web game called Friendship Ranch. Although the game was added to the Facebook page, it did not exist in the form of a plugin. There was no need to download or install it. One only needed to click on a button inside the Facebook page to log in to the game. In order to promote this web-based game, Yang Yi personally wrote an advertising slogan for it in the micro-broadcast advertisement. The boat of friendship capsizes easily. Please cherish your friendship and be careful when stealing vegetables. The first sentence was indeed from an internet celebrity in his previous life. Under Backwave's secret promotion, this sentence became popular all over the country within a few days. It was even used flexibly by a large number of netizens. For example, two good friends on the boat of friendship. One of them suddenly lost weight, and the boat of friendship capsized. Or two good friends on the boat of friendship took a photo together, and the boat of friendship capsized if they only photoshopped the photo. For a while, the jokes on micro-broadcasting were flying everywhere. At the same time, the game Friendship Ranch entered the sights of many people. Of course, Friendship Ranch was not very popular in the beginning. Only a small number of netizens who wanted to try it opened it. However, once they opened it, it was as if they were possessed. It was difficult for them to get rid of it. Planting vegetables, weeding, these simple operations of the game were nothing new. What made them crazy was that they could steal other people's vegetables and even release bugs as pranks. A strange desire was satisfied. The netizens who started playing the game gradually became addicted. The few friends who played the game on Facebook were no longer enough to satisfy their needs. Therefore, more and more people joined in and became addicted to the game. The number of registrations on Facebook increased greatly. Micro-broadcasting accounts could be used universally. More and more people registered on Facebook and joined the game of stealing vegetables. There were even people who set their alarms to play the game in the middle of the night in order to steal vegetables. This almost became a social phenomenon. Almost in the city, out of 10 people around you, 5 of them would steal vegetables. They would talk about stealing vegetables with relish when they went to work. The media couldn't help but report on this simple but explosive magical game. What made it so popular? Some people guessed that it was because it was simple and easy to play. Some people thought that it was because stealing vegetables satisfied people's greed to steal. Others guessed that it was because of its interactive nature. One could interact with friends, friends on the internet, and friends in real life. Naturally, it increased the game's playability. Here, the media even used a professional term put forward by a university professor: weak interaction. Unlike other strong interaction games, Friendship Farm did not require friends to be online at the same time. This reduced a lot of inconvenience and made it convenient for people to play the game anytime and anywhere. However, although Friendship Farm became popular, Yang Yi did not feel optimistic. This was because he saw that although the number of registrations on Facebook that was tied to Friendship Farm had increased, the user stickiness was not high. When people played the game on Facebook, they rarely posted their thoughts on it, or wrote some diaries or uploaded some photos. Their joy or complaints about stealing vegetables were all posted on micro-broadcasting. Yang Yi got someone to create a one-click sharing function for ranking results. Both Facebook and micro-broadcasting could be chosen. However, very few people directly shared it on Facebook. They even patiently waited for the jump to micro-broadcasting to post their results. It looks like micro-broadcasting needs to be developed, not Facebook. We need to develop a mobile app for micro-broadcasting as soon as possible. Yang Yi knew some of the development trajectories. However, he did not expect that a social networking site like Facebook would not be able to develop in China. When Friendship Farm's popularity drops, Facebook's popularity will drop as well. It's time to consider SNS's offer and cash in on this project while it's still popular. That should be the best choice. SNS's position was similar to Yang Yi's QQ in his previous life. They were both leaders in the chat software industry. They had always been eyeing Yang Yi's Facebook and wanted to turn it into an SNS space. However, Yang Yi had set up professional barriers. Therefore, SNS could only propose an acquisition. This acquisition had been in the works for a long time. When micro-broadcasting started to become popular last year, SNS had been eyeing it. Of course, the wealthy SNS wanted to acquire both micro-broadcasting and Facebook. However, Yang Yi would never sell off micro-broadcasting. Now, Facebook was still a possibility. Just nice, with the success of Friendship Farm, Facebook became popular. Compared to before, SNS's desire for Facebook would be greater. Yang Yi would also be able to cash in more. Of course, Yang Yi would also hold back. He had registered the copyright of Facebook overseas and only sold the Chinese version of Facebook to SNS. Yang Yi did not have time to care about the Chinese version of Facebook. He might sell it again, and the price would not be so simple. Chapter 558. Squeak, squeak, squeak. The cicadas seemed to be venting their anger at this summer night. Too hot. Too hot. Zhongqing was located in the south of the Yangtze River. The humidity was relatively high, and the summer was particularly hot. It was the same at night. Even if the heat dissipated a little, the house was still stuffy and suffocating. Unless the air conditioner was turned on, it was difficult to stay in the house. Yang Yi was enjoying the cool air outside. At this time, he was alone on the balcony on the second floor, sitting comfortably on the recliner. He peeled an orange and ate it while glancing at the computer on the side to watch a video. A calm heart naturally cooled down. His ears blocked the sound of the cicadas, and he could feel the cool breeze from the mountains. Although it was very light, it soothed the anxiety caused by the heat in his heart. The only drawback was the harassment of mosquitoes. Yang Yi sprinkled some toilet water on himself to avoid their harassment. The video on the computer was Criminal Thoughts, directed by Paulton Yi. Murphy said that the plot was a little scary and not suitable for children, so she pushed Yang Yi upstairs to the study to let him watch it himself. Yang Yi didn't want to turn on the air conditioner in the study, so he moved to the balcony to enjoy the night breeze and watch it with relish. But at this time, Murphy suddenly exclaimed downstairs, "Honey, come down and watch." Yang Yi, who was watching the dangerous crime scene, was stunned for a moment. He hurriedly opened the screen door and entered the house, thinking that something big had happened downstairs. Yang Yi had just walked quickly to the stairs when he looked down and saw Shi's small head. The little girl was giggling and climbing up with Bao Bao. Perhaps it was the advantage of the breed, but Steamed Bun grew very quickly. He was only half a year old, but he was now taller than Little Grey, the largest of the 3 British Shorthairs. His slender and powerful legs also allowed him to easily navigate tall obstacles such as stairs or sofas. However, Bao Bao was not very brave. In the face of the 3 kittens, he still chose to be timid unconditionally. Sometimes, the naughty Xiao Guai stretched out his paw to pat Bao Bao's head. Bao Bao just raised his eyes and looked at Xiao Guai as if he was wronged. He didn't have any thoughts of fighting back. "Daddy, Daddy." When she saw her father, she couldn't wait to tell him, "Mom's stomach is moving. Mom said that there's a baby inside." Then, seeing her in such high spirits, Yang Yi's hanging heart could finally be put down. So it was fetal movement. Yang Yi chuckled. He bent down and picked up his daughter, who was still talking, and let her sit on his arm. "Let's go. Let's go take a look." Actually, a 5-year-old girl was already a little heavy. Moreover, she was taller, almost as tall as a 6 or 7-year-old child. But in her father's arms, the little girl still sat steadily. Her father's strong arms gave her the most secure support. Steamed Bun happily ran in front, but when he turned around, he saw that Big Master had carried his little master down again. However, it had not had enough fun yet. This little exercise was nothing in front of the little yellow dog. After looking at it suspiciously for a while and confirming that the little master didn't continue to play with it, Steamed Bun whimpered and ran down while wagging its tail. This guy had a very high IQ. When it first came to the house, it urinated and defecated everywhere. Later, Yang Yi took its poop to the bathroom on the first floor and pulled it over to smell it. After teaching it twice, Steamed Bun stopped defecating everywhere. This made Yang Yi unable to implement the reward education method that he had prepared. Later, it even learned how to flush the toilet. After using the toilet, it stepped on the toilet pedal and watched its poop being flushed away. Only then did it run out happily. There was also that time when Steamed Bun killed Shi's little fish. Although Yang Yi forgot to punish it, the little guy still knew that it had done something wrong. It was listless for a few days and didn't bite anything in the house. It was like an obedient baby. Now, Steamed Bun was the same. It only whimpered a little and didn't shout loudly to call its little master back. It knew that its big master didn't like it being noisy. Compared to the other 3 mischievous British Shorthairs, Steamed Bun was really too obedient and was doted on by its masters. Xiao Guai and the others, meow? Doting? Humph, I don't care. Playing with you is because I think highly of you. Yang Yi came down with Shi in his arms. He saw Murphy leaning on the sofa and watching TV. Murphy's pretty face was a little rounder because of her pregnancy. Her eyebrows were relaxed, her eyes were smiling, and her hand was gently touching her belly. When Murphy saw Yang Yi, she hurriedly waved and said happily, "Honey, come over quickly. Xiao Bao was kicking me just now. I don't know if it will kick again later." Because she was already a baby, Murphy and Yang Yi hadn't decided on a name for the new baby, so they simply called it Xiao Bao. Murphy had also felt Xiao Bao's fetal movement before, but it wasn't very big at that time, just like a butterfly flapping its wings. It was only recently that it gradually became bigger. Yang Yi hadn't been able to see it yet. Xiao Bao seemed to be very naughty. It moved a little, but every time he ran over, it stopped moving. This made Yang Yi's heart itch unbearably. She was put down by her father. She happily supported herself on the sofa on the other side of her mother and said to her father, "Papa, I saw it. The baby really can move. He even kicked my hand. Let me see." Yang Yi's face lit up with joy, but he was also a little nervous. He squatted by the side and reached out to touch Murphy's bulging belly. He didn't know if it would be the same as the previous few times, where it would be in vain. She was beside him, blinking her big eyes and looking at her father's movements. She was also looking forward to it. However, the wait was a little long. A few minutes later, the little girl couldn't hold it in anymore. She muttered, "It's true. The baby was moving just now. Mom said the baby was kicking." At this moment, Yang Yi felt a movement in his hand, but it wasn't under his hand, but next to him. He said to Shi in surprise, "Shi, don't talk first. It seems to be moving again." "Yes, it's kicking me." Murphy grabbed Yang Yi's hand and let him touch the place where the baby was moving. "It's here. Do you feel it?" Yang Yi's mouth was wide open, and his eyes were full of smiles. He didn't know what to say, and only knew to nod. This kind of movement of life was very wonderful, and there was no way to describe it with words. Yang Yi only felt that it was overflowing with happiness. She was told not to talk by her father just now, but she couldn't help it. Seeing that her father didn't speak, she turned around and squeezed into her father's arms. She pulled her father's clothes and said, "Papa, let me tell you, the baby also kicked my hand." "Did it kick your hand?" Yang Yi and Murphy looked at each other and smiled. Now that the baby's movement had calmed down, Yang Yi withdrew his hand and rubbed Shishi's little head. He said lovingly, "Yes, it kicked my hand, but I don't know if it was with its hand or its foot." "It's fun, isn't it?" Shishi giggled and said, "Yes, it's amazing. I'm just a little regretful that I couldn't be by your mother's side when she was pregnant with you. I didn't experience the feeling when you kicked your mother, and I didn't get to touch her." Although Yang Yi was talking to Sisi, he was looking at Mo Fei with an apologetic look in his eyes. "Don't talk about the past. Besides, Shishi is so active when she sleeps. She must have kicked you a lot." Murphy smiled brightly and winked at Yang Yi mischievously. She said, "This is a kind of compensation." Murphy no longer cared about the past. She just wanted to face the future hand in hand with Yang Yi. "No, Mom said that I fell from the sky like a fairy. I'm different from the baby, so Papa can't see it." She couldn't feel the emotional communication between her parents. Instead, she was excitedly discussing science with her father. She was very serious and anxious to tell her father that it was not what he thought. Ha ha. The laughter in the villa covered the cicadas outside the house. Chapter 559. A small fetal movement could make Yang Yi and Murphy happy for a long time. However, life didn't always go according to one's wishes, especially a pregnant woman's thoughts. It was even more difficult to understand and adapt to. Murphy was actually already very good. After she became pregnant, she became as gentle as water. Not only did she not have the cold feeling that she used to have when treating outsiders, but she also usually had a gentle smile on her face. Sometimes, when she went to the set with Yang Yi, some small actors who weren't famous would be very curious about why Murphy didn't have the airs of a big star when they saw her. However, for some reason, as her belly grew bigger, Murphy started to lose her temper recently. Sometimes, her temper would come out of nowhere. For example, when there were no more tissues in the toilet, she would ask Yang Yi to bring it over. However, Yang Yi was slightly delayed because of a phone call. When he came over, Murphy couldn't help but complain. Losing her temper was nothing. Yang Yi had read the information before. It said that a pregnant woman's mood was unstable during pregnancy. This was a very normal thing, so he quietly got used to it. However, the problem was that after Murphy lost her temper, her eyes would inexplicably turn red. When her mood swings were more intense, she would even cry and sit on the toilet like Shishi, who had been spanked by her father because she was naughty. Yang Yi looked at Murphy's pitiful appearance and felt pity and helpless. He wouldn't feel angry or impatient because of this. After all, he had read the guide for pregnant women and knew that this was a process that had to be experienced. However, he couldn't let Murphy continue to be upset like this, could he? If her mood swings were more intense, it wouldn't be good for her or the child in her belly. However, Yang Yi was actively looking for a solution, but Murphy herself didn't know why she was so easily upset. Yang Yi didn't know where to start. The filming of The Fugitive gradually came to an end. More and more outdoor scenes were filmed, and the reporters finally managed to capture photos of Yang Yi. The newspapers began to report on Yang Yi's filming. It was something new for Yang Yi to make a movie. After all, Yang Yi was a writer and a singer, but not an actor. His cameo in Fairy Tale was less than a second long. This report still attracted the attention of many fans and book fans. But it wasn't sensational enough. Wasn't it just filming a movie? What was so special about it? Who knows if he's a guest star or the main lead? Moreover, there were hundreds of movies and TV series being filmed in the entertainment industry every day. Yang Yi was not an idol. His fan base only took a glance at this kind of news and then forgot about it. However, the reporters who were bent on creating some big news were not satisfied with this level of exposure. They felt that they could dig up some eye-popping news from this movie. At this time, some well-connected reporters got the news from the film approval department. The screenwriter of The Fugitive was Yang Yi, and the director was Du Yuanlei, the director of the microfilm Fairy Tale that was popular all over the country. Everyone knew that the screenwriter of Fairy Tale was also Yang Yi. Moreover, Yang Yi had also written songs and made commercials in it. Could this be a coincidence? Regardless of whether it was a coincidence or not, the reporters who were good at making groundless accusations and making up stories out of nothing were excited. They began to fabricate a scandal in all seriousness: model husband or scumbag. Yang Yi suspected of cheating on female university director during Murphy's pregnancy. Yes, this title was very long, but it was enough to attract people's attention. They also cleverly used a loophole in the law to use the ambiguous word suspected to avoid the trouble of being held accountable for defamation in the future. However, the content was not as explosive as the title. There was no evidence in the whole article. It was just a few photos of the set without any ambiguity. It was really a picture at the beginning, but the content was made up. As the saying goes, the most brilliant lie is always 70% true and 30% false. In the arguments they gave, the rumor that Yang Yi, original address, and Du Yuanlei were both in Jiang River was true. Du Yuanlei filmed the microfilm Fairy Tale, written by Yang Yi, was true. Now, Yang Yi and Du Yuanlei were filming a movie together. That was also true. However, the so-called witnesses who saw Yang Yi and Du Yuanlei kissing and the so-called rumors that Yang Yi bought a house for Du Yuanlei were all fabricated by the editors. This kind of news was fabricated so that it was difficult for people to make a correct judgment. Many fans still believed it, and many media outlets joined in the fun to repost it. All of a sudden, there was an uproar. Some media outlets even gloated over the news after Yang Yi and Murphy's relationship was confirmed. They then said, "Love dies quickly." This proved that celebrities should keep a low profile in their marriages, so that it would not lead to a real breakup later and all the good things in the past would become a joke. This was not Yang Yi's malicious publicity for his new movie. He was completely unjustly implicated by these unscrupulous reporters. Mo Xiaozhuan's reaction was not slow. Phoebe Studios' official micro-broadcasting even released an announcement. On one hand, they clarified that this was a false story. On the other hand, they also warned the news agency to retract this false report. Otherwise, they would be held legally liable for defamation. However, the effect was not obvious. Yang Yi and Murphy's micro-broadcasting did not update. The netizens thought that the young couple really had a conflict. The fans were anxious. Some extreme fans even ran to Yang Yi's micro-broadcasting, Shi Chef, to curse. But what were Yang Yi and Murphy doing? The two of them were thinking of a solution. However, it was not a conflict as the netizens thought. The problem that needed to be solved was also not a crisis of trust. At first, Yang Yi thought that Murphy was really jealous. After he saw the news outside, he did not care about anything else. He quickly ran home and helped Murphy to the sofa. Actually, he did not need to help her. Then he smiled excitedly and said, "I know why you're unhappy. Are you unhappy because I'm filming with director Du? Are you jealous of director Du?" Murphy looked at Yang Yi in confusion. She shook her head and said, "No. It must be." Yang Yi laughed and stretched out his hands to rub Murphy's face. He laughed and said, "I saw the news outside. I don't know which unscrupulous reporter made it up. They said that I had an affair with director Du and that I had an affair when you were pregnant. Let me tell you, don't believe these people's nonsense. I'm innocent. I only love you in this life." When Murphy heard Yang Yi's confession, she was touched and amused. She patted Yang Yi's hand and said angrily, "Who told you that I'm jealous? I already said that I'm not jealous." Murphy's mood fluctuated, but she was not depressed. Most of the time, she was in a good mood. For example, now, She was smiling and talking. Yang Yi was stunned. Isn't it? I thought that you were always angry because of this. When you saw me filming on the set, you thought too much. Am I such a jealous person? Murphy pursed her lips and said, Don't I know what's going on between you and Xiao Du? Usually, when you're filming, I'll follow you to watch. Then, even if you're not filming, you'll come back to accompany me. Where would you find the time to have an affair? Even if I'm a little jealous sometimes because of other things, I won't suspect you out of nothing just because you're in contact with a woman, right? It was true. Murphy was not as easily jealous as she was when she was dating Yang Yi. Otherwise, wouldn't Ding Xiang be more suspicious than Du Yuanlei? The time Yang Yi spent with Ding Xiang was even more than the time he spent with Du Yuanlei. Then what's the reason? You'll lose your temper from time to time, and then you'll cry. Yang Yi scratched his head and asked. For some reason, Yang Yi actually hoped that Murphy was jealous at this moment, because at least he could know the reason and find a way to solve Murphy's mood fluctuation problem. Now that Murphy confirmed that she was not jealous, Yang Yi was in a dilemma. I'm sorry, I also know that it's not right for me to do this. Murphy saw Yang Yi's dilemma and became depressed. She said very reproachfully, I shouldn't yell at you. I shouldn't be like this. How can I be so barbaric? Yang Yi felt sorry for his wife. He quickly hugged her in his arms and comforted her. It's okay, it's okay. I don't care about your temper. I'm just worried about your health and want to help you solve the problem. Do you know why you feel unhappy? Murphy gently leaned her head on Yang Yi's shoulder and said, I've also thought about it for a few days. I don't know if it's because of this reason. I feel that after I'm pregnant, I don't have much energy. There's nothing to do and it's very boring. I'm bored and unconsciously irritated. That's the reason. Chapter 560. Murphy's anxiety due to boredom was indeed a very thorny problem. Even if Yang Yi knew the reason, it was difficult to find a suitable solution. Because Mo Fei was not an ordinary pregnant woman, she was different from other women. According to the book, Yang Yi taught Mo Fei to do some home crafts, such as string beads, but Mo Fei was not interested in it at all. She even felt more annoyed because of it. She, come here. Let Mama tell you, you can't be so naughty. What are you doing throwing your toys around? Murphy sometimes couldn't control her temper. When she went a little overboard, she would put on a stern face and scold the little girl. Mom, it's Bao Bao. He likes to play. I'll throw it to him and he'll catch it. She was a little frightened by her mother's seriousness. She timidly grabbed her two little hands and explained in a low voice. No matter what Bao Bao does, you have to be educated. You can't throw things around. If you want to play with Bao Bao, you should take a proper dog ball and throw it to Bao Bao to catch it under Dad's supervision outside. Murphy was obviously irritated. She usually didn't scold her daughter so seriously. Even if she did, her voice would be gentle and not as angry as she was now. The little girl lowered her little head and was a little depressed. Yang Yi couldn't stay out of the matter. He came over, put his arm around Murphy's shoulder, and coaxed her. Okay, it's not a big deal. She is a little naughty, but it's every child's nature to love to play. Didn't you tell me not to stifle their nature? But it's also wrong to do this. You're becoming more and more naughty. You're not ladylike at all. After coaxing Murphy, Yang Yi turned to look at Shi. The little girl pursed her little mouth and stood there aggrievedly. She was just short of wiping her tears. He had no choice but to turn his head and coax his daughter. Murphy's anger came and went quickly. She wasn't someone who refused to admit her mistakes. When she calmed down, she went back to hug Shi and apologized. Shi, I'm sorry. Mom lost her temper just now. It's not that Mom doesn't like you, but sometimes she really can't control her temper. After listening to her father's explanation, she was no longer so aggrieved. At this moment, the little girl obediently leaned on her mother's arm, then raised her little hand, touched her mother's face, and said with a smile, Mom, I'm fine. Papa said that Mom is going to give birth to a baby, so. She couldn't remember how to say the word irritated. After a while, she skipped it and said, Mom will be angry, but Papa said that Mom isn't really angry, and she's not scolding me. Yes, you can understand Mama. Mama is very happy. Murphy hugged her daughter, and her face was pressed against the little girl's tender and cool little face. She was so moved that she almost burst into tears. Understand Mom. She felt that she had learned another word, and her eyes were curved with a smile. However, whether learning to make handicrafts or learn to draw, neither could eliminate the irritability in Murphy's heart. Murphy only liked music, and she was not interested in anything else. However, when Yang Yi took her to the studio to record songs, Murphy felt dull and lost. What on earth was going on? Or was Murphy's boredom not because she had nothing to do, but because there were too few people who could communicate with her? Yang Yi felt that he should hold a small party and invite Shishi's friends to come and play, and bring their mothers along so that Murphy could chat with them. Perhaps in this way, Murphy could eliminate the depression in her heart and become cheerful again. However, before that, Yang Yi had to continue filming. The Fugitive was almost finished, and Shishi's scenes had already been finished. However, Yang Yi, Geng Sha, and Guazi's scenes were almost all over the movie, so during the day, Yang Yi had to continue working on the set. Today, there was something extra. Polton Yi, a famous director from America, had arrived. Yang Yi took some time to meet him and talk about the plot of Prison Break. When Yang Yi saw Polton Yi, it was difficult to tell that this old man in his 50s was of Chinese descent, because Polton Yi was like other foreigners. His eyes were sunken, his eyebrows were high, and his skin was relatively white. However, his hair was black, as pure black as an Asian's. Yang Yi, I think your name is very similar to my surname. It's easy to get mixed up, so I prefer to call you Yang. Polton Yi was very enthusiastic. When they met, he chatted with Yang Yi with a smile, as if they were old friends who had not seen each other for many years. You can call me Leon. Yang Yi smiled. They still communicated in English, because Polton Yi's Chinese was so bad that he could not even speak simple greetings. My father died when I was very young, so I didn't have many opportunities to learn Chinese. It's a pity, Polton Yi said with regret. However, my father did give me a Chinese name. What is it? Yang Yi asked with interest. I'm a tough talker. Polton Yi said with his awkward Chinese pronunciation. What? Sorry, I didn't hear you clearly. Yang Yi was confused. Polton Yi had to borrow a piece of paper. He took out a pen from his pocket, wrote his name on it, and handed it to Yang Yi. Polton Yi's Chinese writing was not bad. At least, he wrote his name well, which felt like it was written in a clerical style. Yi Shui Han. So that's his name. What the hell is a tough talker? Yang Yi looked at Polton Yi, dumbfounded. Polton Yi looked at Yang Yi expectantly and said, What do you think? I've been practicing writing my name and signing autographs for my fans. I think it looks good. It's written well. But your name should come from an ancient Chinese poem, Yang Yi said. I know. Polton Yi, no, he should be called Yi Shui Han. The director in his 50s was as happy as a child. He read, Bang, Shi Yi Shui Han. It's a story about a killer. It's the wind blowing, Yi Shui Han. The hero left and never came back. Yang Yi corrected his pronunciation, but he didn't intend to argue with Yi Shui Han about Chinese pronunciation. Mr. Yi, let's talk about your understanding of my movie. How do you want to shoot it? Yi Shui Han became serious when talking about work. His blue eyes revealed a wise look. He said, Every actor in Prison Break is very important. We will find the right actors. Your movie gave me a big surprise because almost all the characters have distinctive characteristics. I also saw that you drew pictures of them. Although we can't find the exact same actors according to your pictures, I think that in order to restore the excitement of the story as much as possible, we should at least choose the same type of actors. In addition to discussing the actors, Yi Shui Han also talked about the plot of the story. Of course, there wasn't much to say here, because the original plot of the TV series had been sorted out in the book. Yi Shui Han could almost shoot according to Yang Yi's plot. But Yi Shui Han wasn't done yet. He also told Yang Yi about the shooting techniques he wanted to use, as well as some editing methods. These involved some technical things. If Yang Yi didn't understand some of it when he watched Du Yuan Lei on the set, he might not have understood it. This is a very exciting TV series, but I hope that you don't sell this book to the United States before the TV series is broadcast. Otherwise, all the plot will be spoiled, and it will be terrible for our audience. Yi Shui Han said to Yang Yi humorously. Of course, it's my fault for being so detailed and comprehensive. Yang Yi couldn't help but laugh. Yang Yi's conversation with Yi Shui Han went smoothly. Yi Shui Han was indeed an excellent director. Other than his Chinese being a bit clumsy, he was impeccable in other aspects. He wasn't an armchair strategist. In the TV series that Yi Shui Han had filmed before, it showed that he was very good at filming suspense and crime plots. He could capture the audience's attention through the tight and tense pace. In addition, the negotiation team's price negotiation was coming to an end. The film and television rights of Prison Break were almost set in stone. Chapter 561. When he came to Sahara Publishing to meet with Paulton Yi, Yang Yi also handed the draft of his new book to Lu Benji. When he came out of the meeting with Paulton Yi, Lu Benji was still engrossed in the new book in his office. He didn't even hear Yang Yi knock on the door and come in. Only when Yang Yi came closer did Lu Benji raise his head absent-mindedly. He pointed at the printed draft in his hand while looking at Yang Yi. His mouth opened, but he didn't know where to start with all the things he wanted to say to Yang Yi. It's unbelievable, really. I didn't think that a novel could be written like this. Lu Benji tried his best to express his amazement, but any description seemed a little weak. You told me that this book would incorporate some of the characteristics of web novels. It's really hard to imagine that it would be embodied in such a way. It's too amazing. Too wonderful. Is that so? I think so too. Yang Yi smiled in response. When he read this novel back then, he also had the same reaction. He was full of admiration for the author's imagination. To be able to write such a well-designed and interlocked novel, it was not a mystery novel, but it was better than a mystery novel. In order to conform to the characteristics of the country, Yang Yi still changed the characters' names to Chinese names and made some adjustments to the background. However, he did not make too many changes to the original text. Unlike The Fugitive and Journey in White Night, he did not want to mess up the narrative order and rhythm of the original text. Leaving the book to Lu Benji to arrange, Yang Yi returned home. However, after some discussion, the location of the party was moved from Yang Yi's villa to Lan Zhou's Kai family's villa. The main reason was that Boss Lan's villa had a very large and beautiful swimming pool. The swimming pool was also divided into an adult area and a children's area. The depth of the children's area was no more than 0.9 meters, and it could be adjusted to be as low as 0.5 meters. Our swimming pool is still at a constant temperature, but it's not open for summer now. Little Yang, little Amo, let me tell you, I'm not bragging. You guys coming here to play in winter is as comfortable as soaking in a hot spring. Lan Zhou Kai waved his hand and said proudly. Unable to resist Boss Lan's enthusiasm, Yang Yi decided to change the venue. However, before they started the party, they had to inform the other children and their parents that they were welcome to come over and play. At this time, Shi and Lan Xian, the two girls, were playing on the bed. They hadn't had enough fun in the boxing gym, so they picked up the blankets and pillows on the bed and started boxing. It had to be said that in the eyes of children, any simple game would be very interesting as long as they played with their friends. Seeing them kneeling on the bed, then vigorously waving their little pink fists on the soft and fluffy quilt, and then letting out a pleasant laughter. As if that wasn't enough, they even wiggled their little butts and moved to each other's side. They squeezed into a ball and fought to hit each other's pillows. Ha ha ha, Shi, you're pressing on top of me. Lan Xian's loud voice and loud laughter could be heard through the bedroom door. I'm not pressing on top of you. Hee, I don't even have any energy left. She was overjoyed. She laughed so hard that her whole body went limp. She leaned on Lon Xian's back and laughed softly. Xian, come, I have a mission for you guys now. Murphy brought over a stack of cards and walked into the bedroom with a smile. What mission? She turned over and lifted her little head. Her hair was a little messy, as if she had just woken up, but her big eyes were very lively and definitely not sleepy. Mom, what mission? There's a mission? Lon Xian also turned around and shouted excitedly. In fact, it wasn't a big mission. It was just for the two girls to make invitations together. Yang Yi had just written the words on the invitations, imitating Shi's and Lon Xian's intonations. All that was left was for Shi and Lon Xian to sign their names on the 3 invitations. This wasn't difficult. Shi could already write her own name very skillfully. Lon Xian also learned to write her own name seriously from her mother after she was stopped by the security guard Uncle Li at the door. Now, although her writing was crooked, it could still be seen. However, Shi and Lon Xian were not satisfied with this. Xian, I want to draw on it. She didn't wait for Lon Xian to finish writing. She said the idea that suddenly popped into her mind. This isn't nice. Drawing will be nice. Alright, I want to draw too. Lon Xian nodded her head. The little girl was also in high spirits. Lon Xian and Shi's education was still not quite the same. Other than kindergarten, Lon Xian sometimes had to learn some other things, such as drawing and playing the piano. Boss Lon wanted to give her daughter the best education, so she also hired a tutor to teach Lon Xian these arts at home. Putting aside the pros and cons of this slightly advanced education method, Lon Xian could still draw now. Therefore, after getting her little friend's approval, she happily jumped off the chair and ran to the bookshelf to take out her colored pencils. The colorful colored pencils made Lon Xian gasp in envy. Of course, Lon Xian's house also had paintbrushes and a lot of paints, but they were all watercolors. I'm going to draw a rainbow here. Cici excitedly pointed at the invitation letter for Yang Luoqi. Then I'll draw a little pig here. I want to use this red color. Lon Xian also picked out a pink paintbrush. She didn't even raise her head as she spoke, and she had already begun drawing with her paintbrush. She was halfway through her drawing when she couldn't help but look up at her little friend's drawing. She couldn't help but giggle. Xian, you drew a pig. Yes. Then I want to draw a cat. I like your cat, Lon Xian said, but her hands didn't stop moving. Just like that, 3 strange invitations were sent out. The children who received the invitations would bring their parents to Xian's house to play this weekend. Then, Uncle Yang Yi would prepare a lot of delicious food for them. Murphy didn't care about the rumors about Yang Yi and Du Yuanlei made up by the media, and Yang Yi didn't care about it either. He thought that the studio would release a clarification statement, but they still didn't know the extent of the media's gossip. Under the influence of some people, the rumors about Yang Yi and Du Yuanlei became more and more serious, and Du Yuanlei's past relationship was also exposed. Of course, this time, the media used facts to speak, and really exposed Du Yuanlei's past relationship. She fell in love with her high school classmate in college for 3 years, and they were entangled for 1 year, until her boyfriend cheated on her. Such a private matter, only Du Yuanlei's classmates during her undergraduate studies knew about it. Coincidentally, one of them worked in a TV station in Xiongnan. It was difficult to find the source of the news, and there was no point in investigating, because Du Yuanlei's hidden sadness was all exposed. There were also some photos that completely showed Du Yuanlei's tragedy. They tore Du Yuanlei's broken heart into pieces again and served it on a plate for the world to see. But other people's sadness was just a carnival of the unscrupulous gossip media. They used this as a pretext to proudly reveal why Du Yuanlei had interfered with Yang Yi and Murphy's marriage. This is a broken jar after being cheated on. She was interfered with by a third party, and now she's the third party. With Du's level of infatuation, I'm sure she'll force Yang Yi and Murphy to divorce. Was there an end to it? Yang Yi originally did not read the reports of these gossip media, but the next day, he saw Du Yuanlei forcing a smile and insisting on not letting her emotions affect her work. But after filming in the morning, she could not help but wipe her tears. Yang Yi saw Du Yuanlei's shoulders from afar, and she looked very sad. Only then did he hear the news from Guaziyi and the others. They were all close friends, including Wang Chao, Zhu Liang, and the others. They all knew Du Yuanlei's character, and Long Ni was the earliest with Du Yuanlei. She knew that the newspaper had indeed exposed Du Yuanlei's scars. Yang Yi was silent at that time. When he returned home that night, he discussed with Murphy and shot a video. Even Murphy, who had been unwilling to appear on camera after her pregnancy, appeared in front of the camera and shot the video with Yang Yi. They used their loving performance to clear up the scandal. Of course, most importantly, they supported Du Yuanlei and praised her directing ability and professionalism. We shouldn't judge a director based on her appearance, figure, or relationship history, but based on her work. Whether it's the documentary XXXX or the short film Fairy Tale, Du Yuanlei is a very outstanding young director. Although she's still a student and this is her first time directing a real film, we have confidence in her. At the same time, Yang Yi and Murphy both appealed to the media to have a conscience when reporting entertainment news. Please don't make groundless accusations and hurt an innocent child. After the short film was posted on micro-broadcasting, friends in the industry who had previously contacted Yang Yi and Murphy and knew the truth all reposted it for Yang Yi and Murphy. Not only Chen Yijie and Chen Fengchen, but also Luo Xin and Zhu Jie. In fact, many celebrities who had been troubled by gossip and were not close to the media also reposted the video and cheered for Du Yuanlei. Although it felt like they were trying to mend the pen after the sheep were lost, the situation gradually changed. The media no longer scolded Du Yuanlei one-sidedly. With more and more people comforting and supporting her, Du Yuanlei pulled herself together. The scar would still be bloody, but hopefully, it would heal one day. Chapter 562. Amidst the storm, the filming of The Fugitive was finally completed. Du Yuanlei, Wang Chao, and the others did not rest. They devoted themselves wholeheartedly to the editing of the movie. Yang Yi could not help with this work. He was on vacation, so he had time to play with Murphy and Shi. Finally, it was the weekend. Although it had rained heavily 2 days ago, the weather did not cool down. The blue sky was illuminated by the scorching hot sun. Even the air was hot. The girls ran outside for a while, and their little singlets were soaked with sweat. However, this did not stop their enthusiasm. The children ran around happily on the grass. Fortunately, the osmanthus trees in the yard were working hard to spread their thick and lush leaves, shielding them from the scorching sun. This was the super big mansion of Lanzhao Kai's family. Yang Luoqi, Chen Shiyun, and Nan Zhaoyu, who had received the invitation, brought their parents to Lan Xian's house to play. Of course, when they saw Yang Yi and Murphy, the parents could not help but laugh and tease them. Fortunately, the newspaper is lying. When we saw the news in the newspaper, we were all dumbfounded. We thought that the two of you were so close. How could there be any problems? Then we thought, if the two of you were not well, what would Shi do? I can help take care of her for a while. Our family's old Nan used to look forward to having a son, but now he regrets not having a daughter, Nan Zhaoyu's mother joked. Everyone was joking. Murphy understood. She held Yang Yi's hand and smiled to show off her relationship with Yang Yi. She said, No, Yang Yi is very good to me. Don't believe the gossip in the news. Who knows how many of them are fake? The main theme of this summer party was, of course, swimming to relieve the heat. This was also what the children looked forward to the most. After changing them into swimsuits, the little guys couldn't wait to jump into the water. The shallow water in the children's pool only reached their thighs. When they lowered their heads, they could still see their feet through the clear water, so they didn't feel afraid. After jumping in, they even started playing. The most excited one was Lan Xian. It was rare for her to have so many good friends to swim with her. After getting into the water, she couldn't wait to scoop up water and sprinkle it on her friends. Ah! Ah! Shi's face was splashed with water, and her bangs were wet. She screamed excitedly, and her high-pitched voice revealed her good lung capacity. What's wrong? Yang Yi had just turned around when he heard his daughter's voice. He quickly turned his head, thinking that something had happened. XNR splashed water on my face. She seemed to be complaining, but she wasn't complaining. The little girl wiped her face, and then her little mouth broke into a bright smile. Obviously, she was enjoying it. Before Yang Yi could reply, the swimming pool was bustling with activity. Chen Shiyun fought back and splashed water on Lan Xian. Nan Xiaoyu, who had just entered the water, saw this scene. The shy little boy, who was only wearing small pants, seemed to have become lively. He was so excited that he waved his small hands and splashed water on his friends. It just so happened that the water splashed on Yang Luoqi, who was happily watching the fire from the other side of the river. The little girl Chi screamed again and again. Zhao Yu. She turned her small head and didn't care to talk to her father. She giggled and fought back with Yang Luoqi. Suddenly, the pool was in a mess. The little guys had a water fight. It was not particularly fierce, but their cries were like flying water droplets, rippling in the air. Yang Yi smiled and shook his head. He really didn't know what to do with these little guys. On the other hand, Lan Xian's dog, the big white Samoyed dog, wandered around the pool. It seemed to be a little anxious, turning left and right. It was unknown whether it wanted to go into the water or was worried that these human children would drown. Yang Yi walked over and patted its head to appease it. He smiled and said, "You can't go into the water. Now it's the children playing." After the water fight for a while, Wu Yu came to stop them. She was not at ease because although the water in the children's pool was not deep, the little guys' heads would still be submerged after lying down. So she also held a bunch of small swimming rings and distributed them to the little guys. "I don't want swimming rings. I can swim." Lan Xian waved her hand and said loudly. Lan Xian just swam a little. The fat little girl was as flexible as a fish in the water, which surprised Yang Yi a little. However, it was not hard to imagine. After all, Lan Xian had a swimming pool at home. She learned to swim from an early age. She was a little fatter and had more buoyancy. It was easier for her to learn to swim than Shi. She also waved her hand with Lan Xian, but she was more polite and said, "Thank you, Auntie, but I don't want it because I can swim too." After that, Shi and Lan Xian looked at each other. The two girls giggled, but no one knew what they were laughing about. She has been learning at home for more than a month. She really can swim. Yang Yi smiled and explained to Wu Yu, "Mom, I don't want the swimming ring either." Yang Luoqi liked to play with Shi. Seeing that Shi didn't want it, she tried hard to untie the swimming ring, but it was a little troublesome because her arms were in the way. "You can't. You have to use the swimming ring. You don't even know how to swim. How can you force yourself?" Wu Yu said. Yang Gua came over at this time. He also walked into the pool and smiled at his daughter. "Okay, Dad will teach you how to swim. When you learn how to swim, you can also swim without the swimming ring like them." They started to swim. On the other side of the adult pool, only Lan Zhoukai and Chen Guoqiang were swimming. However, they only swam around twice. They leaned against the side of the pool and chatted with Nanny Yun, who had recovered but was still not very nimble and couldn't get into the water. Murphy, Wu Jingjing and the other mothers didn't swim much. They were more like taking a bath and chatting near the children's pool. Wu Yu and Nan Zhaoyu's mothers were actually a little worried about their children. However, Yang Yi and Yang Gua were at the children's pool, so it wasn't a big problem. Lan Xian swam to Shi's side and said, "Shi, let's have a swimming competition. I'll swim faster than you. Over there." "Okay." Shi happily stood up in the pool and nodded. "I also want to compete with you." Chen Shiyun, who was wearing the swimming ring and kicking the water carelessly, also came over. Yang Yi saw the movement over there and just watched silently. Then he looked away and patted Nan Zhaoyu's butt. He smiled and said, "Okay, that's the posture. Try to swim. If you can swim, it means you can swim." Of course, Yang Yi was just coaxing him. Nan Zhaoyu hadn't learned how to swim yet. With the swimming ring on, he only knew how to step on the bottom of the pool slowly. Yang Yi couldn't stand it and taught him a lesson. Of course, it was impossible to really teach him how to swim. After all, the time was too short. Being able to teach him how to float with the swimming ring and how to kick the water with his hands and feet to swim toward his goal on the surface of the water was already good enough for him to learn these movements. When Nan Zhaoyu started to kick the water, the three girls had already started. She shouted, 3, 2, 1. As the little girl's soft voice fell, the three figures paddled forward in the water. Chen Shiyun didn't know how to swim. She only knew how to kick the water with the swimming ring, so she gradually fell behind. Lan Xian swam very well. Her reaction to the start was the fastest. She swam very far away in an instant. Moreover, she was like a frog, kicking the water with her little head bobbing up and down. Her breathing maintained a good rhythm. She learned freestyle from her father. The little girl had already finished her apprenticeship and her swimming posture was very beautiful. In the process of learning how to swim, the little girl who had cried and shouted that she didn't dare to swim in the deep water showed a good swimming ability that even Yang Yi didn't expect. The speed at which she learned how to breathe was faster than the speed at which she learned freestyle. And after learning how to breathe, she naturally learned how to swim very quickly. Although she had only learned how to swim freestyle, one could see the little girl in the water. Her thin little arms occasionally flipped over the surface of the water, drawing beautiful sparkling arcs. Her little feet were also like paddles, rhythmically beating the water surface. The tumbling waves pushed the little girl forward quickly. Cece was tall and her legs were long and slender. Therefore, she was like a beautiful little swordfish in the water, drawing silver ripples in the water. Her swimming was beautiful and fast. Although the start was slow because of the shouting, she eventually caught up with Lan Xian. The two girls didn't know who was faster and who was slower. In any case, they swam to the opposite shore and came out of the water at the same time. While the two girls were still chattering about who was first, the gratified Yang Yi had already retracted his gaze and turned to look at Murphy and the others. Seeing and hearing this scene, Yang Yi suddenly understood the crux of Murphy's unhappiness. Chapter 563. What did women like to talk about the most? Gossip, clothes, cosmetics. However, Murphy and her group of mothers did not talk about these this time. Instead, they asked about the entertainment circle around Murphy, a big star they were all familiar with. Then, as they chatted, they began to sing. They were singing Murphy's song. When Yang Yi looked over, they were happily singing, "In a strange city, in a familiar corner." It was a very sad song. When they sang it in unison, the sad atmosphere had long disappeared, and laughter was mixed in. It had to be said that this song was indeed very popular. It was even more popular than the difficult, "Listen to the Sea." Everyone in the group could sing it, especially Wu Jingjing. She sang it quite well. After all, she was a stay-at-home mother and had time to hum songs. Wait a minute. I want to hear Murphy sing this climax. Wu Jingjing did not want to steal the limelight. She smiled and asked everyone to stop. She said, "I used to listen to records. Did I have a chance to see Murphy's concert? Today, no matter what, I want to hear Murphy sing live." The other mothers also clapped and cheered. Wu Yu bent over with laughter and said, "Yes, we are showing off in front of an expert." Murphy did not refuse. She sat by the pool and played with the water gently with her feet. If it were not for her big belly, she would have been as playful as a young girl. With a happy smile, she gently continued the part they had just sung and hummed. "In the sandstorm, watching you go away, I am so sad that I can't control myself," as expected of Mo Fei. This part of the song was supposed to be slightly higher in pitch, and the rhythm was a little rushed, but at this time, she actually changed her singing style. Although it was not as sad as the original singing style, The light humming and the unique accent made this part of the lyrics fit well in the happy atmosphere. At the children's pool, Yang Yi listened to Murphy's singing and turned to look at her. In a trance, Yang Yi seemed to see Murphy before she was pregnant. He looked thoughtfully, ignoring Nan Xiaoyu, who was wearing a swimming ring. Nan Xiaoyu swam and his posture was messed up. He was like a dog crawling in the water and only moved a little bit after a long time. When they came back in the evening, Shi, who was very tired after swimming, fell asleep not long after. After Yang Yi took care of Shi, he came downstairs. Murphy, who had just taken a shower, was peeling an apple in the living room. She still got hungry easily at night, but pregnant women shouldn't eat too much midnight snacks. Eating too much would increase the burden on the stomach, and it was easy to absorb too much energy. "Do you want to eat an apple? I'll cut half of it for you." "I can't eat so much anyway," Murphy said as she cut half of the apple and handed it to Yang Yi with a smile. Murphy was in a good mood. She looked at Yang Yi with a smile. There was no burden and anxiety in her clear eyes. Obviously, her mood was eased today and she was a lot more relaxed. Yang Yi took the apple and took a bite. Then he smiled and asked, "Honey, let me ask you, do you want to sing very much?" "Ah." Murphy was a little confused. "I mean, you said that you felt bored before. Is it because you don't have a chance to sing?" Yang Yi added, "I'm not talking about singing in the recording studio or at home, but the kind of singing where there is an audience and fans below the stage. Then you can sing for them." It was not as simple as singing. Yang Yi also thought of writing a new song for Murphy, but the effect was not obvious. The reason why Murphy was so happy today was that the mothers were also listening to Murphy's singing. Her singing was listened to, cheered, and liked. This was the real reason why Murphy was in a good mood. Murphy was stunned for a moment. She thought about it carefully. When she thought of singing in front of an audience, she did feel a surge of anger that had been tormenting her for a long time in the past month. After thinking it through, Murphy pursed her lips. She grabbed Yang Yi's clothes with both hands and said sadly, "Honey, I want to hold a concert. After I came back, I only held 3 concerts." Yes, a long time ago, Murphy told Yang Yi that she did not care about sales or awards. She just wanted to continue singing. She wanted to stand on the stage and sing for the fans who liked her. No wonder when Yang Yi first came to this world, Murphy, who had not made a comeback yet, had such a bad temper. No wonder now that she was pregnant, except for recording, Murphy, who was basically in a state of rest, would occasionally lose her temper. Murphy wanted to hold a concert so much. First, she retired for 5 years. Then, she finally held 3 concerts with great difficulty. Then, she was interrupted by the pregnancy problem. How could she not be depressed? However, after Murphy acted coquettishly with Yang Yi, she immediately worried that Yang Yi would feel embarrassed. She quickly waved her hand and said, "Actually, it's not necessary to hold a concert." "I don't think so. I don't have the conditions to hold a concert now." Yang Yi rubbed Murphy's face with heartache and said, Yes. "Why are you still denying it? Now that the difficulties and the crux of the problem are in front of us, we have to think of a relatively compromised solution together." "What solution?" Murphy looked at Yang Yi eagerly. "I thought of one. Listen to it and see if it's feasible." Yang Yi said, "That is, we can pick 20 to 30 to 40 fans and invite them to Zhongqing. Then, we can hold a meeting with your hardcore fans. The time doesn't need to be too long, about 2 hours, depending on the situation. Then, in this meeting, you can sing for the fans. You don't have to work too hard and have more rest. During the rest period, you can talk to the fans and let some fans talk about what might happen after they like your songs." Yang Yi spoke eloquently. Murphy looked at him admiringly and listened carefully. The more she listened, the more blurred Murphy's expression became. Obviously, she was intoxicated by the scene described by Yang Yi. This was considered a small concert, and it was very casual. She could communicate more with the fans. Murphy was already imagining herself singing in front of dozens of fans. How is it? Is this method feasible? Of course, I know it's a little difficult for you because you don't want the fans to see it at this time. Yang Yi smiled. It's okay, it's okay. I'm very happy. I think it's okay. Murphy quickly shook her head and nodded. In that case, I'll call Xiaowan tomorrow and let her arrange a concert for you as soon as possible to see the effect. Yang Yi said with a smile. Hubby, you're so nice. You came up with such a good idea for me. Murphy was in a good mood. She even hugged Yang Yi's arm and said sweetly. Yang Yi's arm was clamped by Murphy's chest. After pregnancy, the treasure that was already not small became a lot bigger and softer. With this clamp, Yang Yi felt his spirits rise. However, it was a pity that although they could have sex during pregnancy, they couldn't do it too frequently and without restraint. And the day before yesterday, I want you to go with me and then accompany me. Murphy put her head in Yang Yi's ear and said coquettishly like a child. Okay, of course I'll go with you. If I don't go with you, how can I be at ease? Yang Yi was a little restless, but he could only suppress it and said, hubby is the best. Murphy's current mood was so happy that she felt like flying. This was the right mood during pregnancy. Mo Fei was so happy that she continued to say on Yang Yi's shoulder, Honey, I feel that sometimes I really bring you a lot of trouble, because I really don't like many things, and when things don't go my way, I have a bad temper. It's hard to accept. No, this is the emotional performance of pregnancy. You read the book, so I don't blame you. Yang Yi kissed Murphy's forehead, and the turmoil in his heart calmed down a little. If only I could be like you, Murphy suddenly said. How about me? Yang Yi asked curiously. You're easy to satisfy. And you're also very patient, whether it's me or she, Murphy murmured. And you have a wide range of interests, and you do everything well. Even if you can't write books, you can write songs, or write scripts, or make movies. You never feel that life is boring, unlike me. It seems that I can't sing, so I feel separated from the world. Your life every day is very meaningful. Murphy was still muttering, but Yang Yi was stunned. My life every day is very meaningful? Is it really like this? Chapter 564. Mo Fei said that his life was meaningful every day, but Yang Yi didn't think so. Because in his life every day, except for watching Cici grow up day by day, which made him feel fulfilled, nothing else was meaningful. Writing books and songs, Murphy thought he was composing in the study room, but Yang Yi knew that these weren't his works. Sometimes, in order to conform to the settings of this world, Yang Yi had to make artistic changes to these works, but according to the copyright laws of this world, these works were still plagiarized by him. Of course, legally, no one could pursue Yang Yi's responsibility. Who would know that these works came from another world? But for Yang Yi himself, even if he didn't care about it at all, he couldn't deny that his life's value wasn't reflected. The responsibility of taking care of his wife and children covered up the emptiness in Yang Yi's heart. In the past, Yang Yi thought that since he was reborn, he could take advantage of the fact that he wasn't being chased by assassins to enjoy the life of an ordinary person and wake up naturally. Then, he would have a beautiful and pure wife in his arms, and a cute and sensible daughter on his back. He didn't envy them. At most, he would write about his past life in exchange for living expenses, as if this kind of life was enough, and he would live a normal life. However, this wasn't the case. Yang Yi couldn't sleep until he woke up naturally. He still maintained the habit of waking up early like he did in his past life, and persisted in exercising to maintain his body at a good level. He also couldn't be like Yang Guo, who was willing to retire at the top of the tide, and could stay in Gu Mu with his beloved Xiao Long Nu for decades. Murphy dragged him to sing, and Yang Yi went. Although he was forced by the situation, and didn't enjoy the stage like Murphy, it had to be said that singing in front of tens of thousands of people, Yang Yi's heart was very satisfied, as if he had reached a milestone in his life. Yang Yi felt that he didn't like to show his face, and it was best to hide behind the scenes and do what he could. But Murphy told him that he liked to act in movies, so he gave it a try. Of course, Yang Yi later realized that he wasn't like Guo Zi, who had a particularly deep obsession with acting in movies. However, He did like to play the movie characters he liked. If he played Ludi well, he would be able to restore the original cold but kind big man. He would even integrate his own understanding into it. If he acted even better, Yang Yi felt that his heart would be satisfied. There was nothing wrong with living a normal and happy life. Yang Yi didn't dislike it, and he wouldn't change his appearance and live a busy life without caring for his family. But Yang Yi felt that he should find his own way to do it, and then fight for it, creating his own value. Otherwise, the emptiness in his heart would explode one day. But what did Yang Yi want to do? There wasn't a question, there was no answer. Yang Yi began to dig into the memories of his previous life. What did he like to do in his previous life? Singing didn't really count. After all, his voice and face were destroyed in his previous life. He could only appreciate pop music, and couldn't hum it. Writing his own novel. That was a little difficult. Yang Yi liked to read, and his writing was good. It could be seen from the successful adaptations of novels in this life. But if he really wanted to write a novel, Yang Yi lacked the inspiration. Then, the only thing he really liked was pure music. Once upon a time, he sat in the middle of an empty shelter, wearing a super hi-fi headset, listening to Sojiro's original scenery of hometown. In the beautiful sound of the ocarina, it was as if his soul floated out, as if he could feel the author's homesickness. That scene was his soul riding a high-speed train, shuttling through the endless fields, passing by mountains and rivers. When he took off his headset, he didn't know when, but tears were already streaming down his face. Yes, although he didn't know where his hometown was in the Chinese mainland, but in terms of music, it didn't prevent him from emotionally resonating with this song. Of course, it wasn't just original scenery of hometown that was played with special instruments. There were many, such as Mr. Hisaishi's Accompanying You, also known as City in the Sky by everyone, the beautiful and romantic Canon, the light but gripping Mark of the Rain, and so on. Of course, there was also the domestic Piano of the Night, the violin version of Butterfly Lovers, and so on. There was too much pure music played with instruments, so beautiful that it was suffocating. In his previous life, Yang Yi had also tried to perform the works of these masters himself. Although he played a few basic instruments quite well, his picky ears could still tell that there was a difference. So, he had been practicing until he arrived in this world. In this world, he didn't practice playing pure music. Perhaps because of Murphy, he put more energy into pop music. Of course, being able to sing, and being able to freely control different vocal ranges, was something that made Yang Yi excited. But now that he thought about it carefully, Yang Yi still liked pure music. It was just that he hadn't taken this path yet, even if Murphy gave him a violin. However, in this aspect, how could Yang Yi show his value in life? Was it still the same as before, copying and writing, and bringing in the classic pure music from his previous life? But in this way, what was the difference from what he did before? How could he create value and achieve meaning? Yang Yi thought for a long time in bed that night, and finally, he made a decision. I want to compose my own music. Yang Yi said to himself. Composing music wasn't a simple matter. It wasn't something that could be done just by talking about it. Even if it was a student from a professional class, it wasn't necessarily possible to write a song that was barely worth listening to. Moreover, Yang Yi wanted to compose, and it wasn't just any song. He wanted to create classics like Mark of the Rain and Lovers of the Liang. This ambition seemed to be a little too big, and also seemed to be a little overconfident. There was only a wall between a genius and a madman. He wasn't a genius, so he could only be a madman or a fool. Of course, Yang Yi wouldn't just create his own classic, and not bring in the classics from his previous life. That would be a pity. He still wanted to play it himself. But Yang Yi felt that no matter how difficult this crazy idea was to realize, he should give it a try. Starting from learning the basics of composing, starting from small pieces of music, starting from the simplest piano or violin, Yang Yi had already thought of a path for himself. Composing a song might not be too difficult, but composing a classic was definitely not a goal that could be achieved with hard work. Yang Yi even planned to make it his life goal. He didn't need to be too anxious, and he didn't need to separate his life. He didn't need to be like Beethoven and torment himself. It didn't matter. Yang Yi could use his leisure time, such as when Shishi went to school, and when Murphy went to work. Or even in his ordinary life, such as traveling with his family, he could slowly learn and accumulate. He could listen to more of this world's music, absorb more nutrients, embrace more of this world and life, and gain inspiration from it. In his lifetime, as long as he could create his own classic music, it would be his dream come true. Of course, even if he couldn't create it in the end, Yang Yi felt that it didn't matter. The process of composing would definitely allow him to grow and create value. This was also a manifestation of his life's meaning. Yang Yi felt that it was necessary for him to go to school to further his studies. Chapter 565. When Mo Xiaowan received Yang Yi's notice, she began to arrange for the company's staff to organize a lottery for Murphy's hardcore fans to participate in Murphy's fan meet and greet via micro-broadcasting. Because the fan meet and greet did not charge admission fees and there was a limit on the number of people who could attend, it immediately caused a huge sensation. Fans forwarded comments, tagged their friends, and waited for the lottery. They hoped to be the lucky one and be able to get close to their idol. Some rich fans also joined in. To them, the cost of admission was not a problem, but Murphy was indeed a rare sight. This was a rare opportunity. The fan meeting was not a new thing, but using the micro-broadcast to repost the lucky draw to distribute the tickets, this ingenious approach still attracted some media reports. Moreover, Mo Fei had been pregnant for more than 6 months, so it was quite unexpected for her to show up again. Unfortunately, when some reporters asked Phoebe Studio for confirmation, Mo Xiaowan regretfully told them that the fan meet and greet was private and would not invite friends from the media to report it. Yang Yi did not care about how the media discussed it. Seeing Murphy actively preparing for the fan meet and greet with a cheerful smile on her face, he could finally put down the worries in his heart. A few days later, the coffee shop on the street corner reopened. After more than a month, the coffee shop was finally renovated and the smell was removed. Therefore, Yang Yi came a day earlier to clean up, then drove Murphy and Shishi over to play. This reopening was the same as the first opening a year ago. There was no grand ceremony, nor were there any decorations. Yang Yi just opened the door, hung up the sign, and invited 2 or 3 friends over for coffee and a chat. The new coffee shop was very lively. There was a new wooden coffee table, a solid wood frame, and a round back coffee chair made of natural seaweed vines. The partitions and bookshelves were all made of dark and elegant wood. Even the glazed lamps had wooden shells. The overall tone was very consistent and gave people a sense of harmony. Other than the wall with the blackboard and the graffiti space, the wallpaper on the other walls and pillars were all pictures of broken walls and tiles. However, in the middle of the broken walls and tiles, there were birds, jumping on them. Every bird was of a different species. Some had brownish-red wings like an eagle, while others were white. There was a little wren that was black all over, but its beak was orange-red. It tilted its head, and its eyes, which were about the size of peppercorns, seemed to be looking outside through the wallpaper. It looked very lifelike. These broken walls and tiles, as well as these birds, coupled with the ingeniously planted devil's ivy on the partitions and the branches of devil's ivy hanging down from the bookshelves, the whole coffee shop reflected a sense of vitality. This added a layer of magical meaning to the name, the Corner Coffee Shop. When you walked past the corner, you suddenly found a magical coffee shop. This was a chance encounter, a beautiful chance encounter. When you stepped into the coffee shop, you would have a strange imagination. It was as if the city had degenerated and people had returned to the beautiful forest, and your originally impetuous mind would suddenly calm down at this moment. Of course, your originally calm mind would be happy at this moment. Wow, Papa, I like this bird. It's the most beautiful. Shishi was like this. When she came to the coffee shop, she was like Granny Lou entering the Grandview Garden. Her eyes were not enough, and she jumped around to explore the beauty of the new coffee shop. The little girl was like a lark, and her sweet laughter was heard. Really? Dad can't go now. Come over and tell Mom and Dad. After Yang Yi finished speaking, he looked at Murphy, who was sitting in the booth in front of the bar, and smiled. He brought a glass of milk to Murphy. They had their own exclusive booth behind the bar, which was very hidden. It was covered by bookshelves and partitions, as well as tender green vines and leaves. There was only one entrance that could allow one person to pass through. Originally, the top was transparent, but it blocked the view of others, so it did not make people feel that it was breathless. Yang Yi still preferred the environment of the coffee shop. In addition, next semester, he might go to Jiangchuan to attend a class on composition, so he would spend a lot of time in Jiangchuan. By the way, he could take Murphy out to relax. Sitting in their exclusive big booth, from the door, most people would not notice that there was someone there, and it provided Yang Yi and the others with a private space. It was the old man Hu Song Nan, the original owner of the small building, who arranged for him to attend the class. Although the old man had retired for many years, he was, after all, an old professor of the Academy of Classical Music. He had some connections. Yang Yi went to attend some classes, and it was not improper for him to get a degree, so it was very easy to solve. Of course, there were no customers in the coffee shop now, and Murphy did not sit inside. After all, the view was not wide enough. At this moment, the little girl ran over happily with a smile on her face and said, "Oh, why don't you go and see? It's really beautiful." She did not wait for others to respond to her complaint, and she could not wait to continue. "Papa, Mom, let me tell you, at first I thought it was a real bird, and I was afraid that it would fly away." Yang Yi looked at her waving her little hands like a bird flapping its wings. He could not help laughing and said, "Then what are you going to do? Are you going to go up and catch it?" "No, I don't dare to catch it. I'm afraid that it will bite me." The little girl quickly waved her hands and explained with a pout, "But it's not real. Later I found out that it was on the wall. Haha." As Cici said this, she even started to laugh. "Then what do you think this bird looks like? Why do you think it's beautiful?" Murphy said. However, Cici shook her head and said with conviction, "No, Mama, the beautiful bird I'm talking about isn't this one, it's that one, a very small one." "Then it's not scary." Yang Yi and Murphy were almost confused by her. "Then tell me about the one you think is beautiful. For example, what does it look like? What color are its feathers? And what are its characteristics?" Murphy guided Shi to describe it in her own words. This was a challenge for Shi. The little girl's eyebrows drooped, and she lowered her head for a while. She was a little troubled, but after a while, her eyes lit up, and she looked up and said excitedly, "Mom, it's really beautiful. It's round like this and then like a ball and then... I don't know what color it is, it's like a table." She still did not know enough vocabulary. "A table is also brown," Yang Yi reminded her. Okay, it's brown." She remembered that her father had told her this word before, and it left a deeper impression on her. "Mom, why don't you come with me to see it? You'll know when you see it." She held Murphy's hand and said coquettishly. After all, it was too difficult to describe it. Seeing it once was better than hearing about it 100 times. Murphy had to stand up and follow the enthusiastic Shi to see it. Yang Yi also followed them to take a look. Shi thought the bird was the most beautiful, but it was not the most beautiful. It was a brown-headed crow with brown feathers. A bird with a pure color could not be considered the most beautiful. But it was indeed the most adorable. It had a small round head and no neck, and its small body was round, rounder than a sparrow's. It looked like a small meatball. With such a small figure, a small mouth, and dark brown, round eyes, it was simply a cute thing, cuter than an angry bird. No wonder she liked it. She continued to show her mother around the coffee shop, and Yang Yi welcomed his guests. Guazi was the first to arrive. Although he had gone home for a few days after filming, he also came back to school as it was close to the start of school. It's prettier than before, but compared with before, it feels like something is missing. Guazi walked around and greeted Murphy and Shi. Then he slipped back to the bar counter and said to Yang Yi, "What's missing?" Yang Yi poured him a cup of coffee and asked with a smile, People. Sister Ding Xiang was there before, Guazi said. Chapter 566. Ding Xiang and Yang Huan were still in Beijing. It was said that after Yang Huan played a few extra roles, she finally got a chance to play a small role. She was the maid of the main character in a period drama. She appeared in 2 episodes, but in the end, the maid was killed by an arrow in order to protect her master. After filming this small role, they would only be able to return when school was about to start. Hence, they would not be able to make it in time for the reopening of the coffee shop. Because of this, Yang Yi rolled up his sleeves and returned to the bar to cook. Wasn't I the only one in the coffee shop in the early days? Where was Ding Xiang then? Yang Yi looked at Guazi with disdain and said, if Huan Huan was here, she would definitely say that you didn't miss Ding Xiang, but the cake she made. Hee, it's all the same. Guazi was not embarrassed. Instead, he laughed proudly. Yang Yi and Guazi talked and laughed as if they had really returned to a year ago. At that time, he did not have any special identity, and Guazi did not reveal his background. Their friendship was like that. They talked without thinking and joked casually. Of course, Yang Yi's inexplicable feelings were not because of Guazi. Other than growing taller, the fatty did not change much. He was not afraid of power. Whether he knew Yang Yi's identity or not, it would not affect his attitude towards Yang Yi. But it was different for others. Like Wang Chao and Zhu Liang. After Yang Yi became a big star, they did not dare to talk dirty in front of Yang Yi like they did in the bar. Oh yes, Brother Yang, has Sister Huan's admission notice been sent back? Guazi asked with concern. Yang Huan's college entrance examination results were out at the beginning of the month. They were not high or low, but she easily passed the cultural test. Hence, the admission notice from Media University of Jiangqing had been sent back early. However, Yang Huan was careless. When the results were out, she changed the mailing address to her home address and sent the admission notice directly to Wadeaku village. Hence, she had to trouble Yongqing to send it back. Note 1. Yes, we can't make any mistakes. Yang Yi nodded with a smile. Today is the reopening of the cafe. Who came? Guazi asked curiously. Why am I the only one here? It's still the same people. Xiao Du, Wang Chao, Xiao Zhu, and Xiao Lin's girlfriend will come over as well. As for why no one came, it's because I told them to come over in the afternoon. They happened to hear that you were in school, so they asked you to come over in the morning. Yang Yi smiled. Guazi knocked his head on the bar counter and cried out in grievance. My big brother, I thought you were going to do some big ceremony, so I didn't even get enough sleep. I woke up early in the morning to wash my face, brush my teeth, and do my hair. In the end, I was the only one here the whole morning. There's also Shi and Murphy. Yang Yi smiled. Although he also took care of Du Yuanlei and the others' day and night work, in Yang Yi's heart, even if they were friends, he still needed to treat them differently. Murphy and Shi were pushing open the door to look at the flower beds outside. When they heard this, Murphy turned around and smiled at Yang Yi. The warm sunlight fell on the tips of her hair, spreading a golden and red glow. I think we should bring Steamed Bun over to play. Steamed Bun likes the flowers here. She was still talking to her mother, her voice as pleasant as the wind chimes at the door. If he comes over, he might ruin the flowers. The puppy doesn't know what's important. The door closed, and the cafe fell silent again. Guazi could only chat casually with Yang Yi. Where did Lin Mu go? I heard that he's still participating in Xiongnan Station's talent show called Moving Youth? Yes, previously it was the audition, but there was a gap in between. The finals will be held this month. Ran Jin told me that he made it to the top 8. Alright, this weekend is the final battle. It will be broadcasted live. The top 8 will compete for the national championship. I hope little Lin can realize his dream. Yang Yi was still happy for Lin Mu and to get such a result. But I don't think it's appropriate. Xiongnan Station is an enemy station. Isn't Tang Kai-tai's father the leader of Xiongnan Station? Why would Lin Mu and go to other people's territory? Guazi frowned and said, even if it's Xiongnan Station, they wouldn't go so far as to pull strings behind the scenes for such a big program. Plus, little Lin and Tang Kai-tai don't know each other. Who would target him for no reason? Of course, it can't be said that there are no shady scenes. No matter what, it's already very good that he made it to the top 8. If he really lost the championship because he was targeted, then it doesn't matter. Yang Yi said calmly. In this finals, including this audition, Lin Mu and finally didn't stubbornly sing Cantonese songs all the time. Instead, Cantonese songs became his trump card. He would take them out from time to time as a surprise weapon, allowing him to surpass all the difficulties and make it to the top 8. This was related to Lin Mu and calming down in the cafe, playing music for the customers, singing for the customers, and these self-cultivation exercises. In a newspaper, when Lin Mu and was interviewed by a reporter, he talked about his experience. He said that working in a coffee shop made his voice purer and more moving, and that the occasional guidance of a good teacher also greatly improved his singing skills. In order to avoid bringing trouble to Yang Yi, Lin Mu and didn't tell the reporter which cafe he worked in. Of course, Yang Yi didn't read this newspaper. With Lin Mu and's dull personality, he wouldn't use this newspaper to ask for credit from Yang Yi. Listening to Yang Yi's words, Guazi shrugged his shoulders and smiled. Then I wish him good luck. Although I'm not optimistic about his future in Xiongnan Station, I think he doesn't need to participate in those talent shows at all. Learn singing from Big Brother Yang, or sign under your company. No matter what, it's better than running into a wall everywhere. Guazi's words weren't unreasonable, because those talent shows were basically for some record companies to select talents. Some record companies cooperated with TV stations. Not only did they pay, but they also sent big-name stars as judges. The TV stations earned the ratings and advertising fees of the show, and the record companies could directly sign those excellent singers. Moreover, these excellent singers didn't need to be promoted by them. They already had a certain degree of fame through the talent show. This was a win-win model, and a semi-open secret. Everyone has their own aspirations. It's fate that we met. As for the future, who can say for sure? Yang Yi didn't take these too seriously. He said calmly, just like you're now an artist under Huai Brothers, but if you want to go solo in the future, whether you go to another film company to have more resources, or open your own studio like Murphy and I won't stop you. No, when did I want to go? Guazi quickly waved his hand and said, I'm fighting for Big Brother Yang. Didn't you invite Lin Mu and back to train him? You've misunderstood my original intention. Yang Yi froze for a moment and laughed. First of all, I invited little Lin to the coffee shop because I really think he's a good singer and a person with dreams. When he was chasing his dreams, he encountered setbacks. It just so happens that our coffee shop also needs such an amateur musician to play for everyone, so I decided to help him and let him have the courage to continue chasing his dreams. As for how he will go in the future and how he will chase his dreams, it will all depend on his own efforts. It's the same for you. I'll cheer for you and shout for you, but I won't help you succeed and help you become the best actor. Everything depends on your own efforts. Yang Yi looked at Guazi and said. Guazi smiled proudly and said, Of course, if I need you to train me to become the best actor, what's the point of fulfilling my dream? There's no sense of accomplishment at all. Wow, this little fatty still has his own little tsundere. Chapter 567. That's the logic, so the second point that I want to talk about is the original intention of the Huai Brothers Company. It definitely doesn't want to be like Tian Mei, a management company that only pursues profits. If that's the case, I might as well not start this company and just run a small studio with Murphy. It's enough for us to do our own work. Yang Yi continued. The reason it was set up is to provide a platform for my brother and sister to not worry about being cheated. I'm not willing to sign with just anyone. Yang Yi purposely glanced at Guazi and said seriously, Don't bring anyone into the company, our company doesn't welcome outsiders. Yang Yi was obviously referring to Geng Sha. When they were shooting the movie, Guazi was still excitedly telling Geng Sha about the management company he signed with. Luckily, Yang Yi stopped him in time. Of course, Geng Sha also signed with a film company with a good reputation in the industry. Grandfather Zhang Lei saw that he had no one to rely on and recommended him. Guazi embarrassedly stuck out his tongue and said, "Okay. I got it. That's the logic. I don't want the Hua Yi brothers to become a time bomb that affects our relationship, so don't expect the company to bring you a lot of resources. If you want to go to another company, I definitely won't stop you," Yang Yi said seriously to Guazi. He placed great importance on this, because the money a small management company made was nothing in his eyes. Now that Facebook's domestic project was ready to be sold to SNS offered a high price of 500 million, but Yang Yi wasn't satisfied. He still asked the negotiation team to continue negotiating with SNS. He felt that even if they were to sell, Facebook, which was so popular, should be sold for 800 million. Although it was only the domestic part, in Yang Yi's mind, Facebook had the potential to be worth at least 3 billion according to Renren's market value in his previous life. Of course, SNS wasn't stupid enough to spend 3 billion on a project that hadn't even been tested by the stock market. If it wasn't for Friendship Farm's popularity on Facebook, they would have spent at most 200 to 300 million. If it could be sold for 800 million, Yang Yi would be satisfied. Moreover, with this 800 million, he would have enough money to make plans for Shishi's amusement park in advance, such as buying a few pieces of land first. Looking at the price of the land, it was definitely more cost-effective than keeping Facebook and waiting for it to reach 3 billion before selling it, not to mention that it might not be possible to do so. As for how to buy the land, Yang Yi had already thought of it. He wanted to work with Lanzhou Kai. Lanzhou Kai was a real estate tycoon. Not to mention how much Facebook could sell for, just look at Sahara Online Mall, which currently occupied half of the online shopping market. 2 months ago, Lanzhou Kai went to Yongcheng to discuss the second round of financing with Fu Jun. The 6% shares of the second round cost Lanzhou Kai 400 million. This far exceeded Yang Yi and Fu Jun's initial expectations. At first, they only wanted to buy the entire 15% shares for 400 million. Who knew that during the second round of financing, Sahara Online Mall's market value was estimated to be 5 billion. Although it was indeed a little overestimated at that time, anyone could see that its potential was not just that. The reason why Sahara Online Mall could grow from 200 to 300 million to where it was now was because Yang Yi had pointed out the right development path for Sahara Online Mall from the start. That was how Sahara Online Mall avoided bumps and bruises. With the expansion of the logistics coverage, more people would use the more convenient Sahara Online shopping mall. Its market value would naturally rise. Of course, Lanzhou Kai was also willing to fork out 400 million. Because 2 months later, Sahara Online Mall was no longer only worth 5 billion. Because of the launch of Sahara Online Mall's mobile app, it entered the mobile market that hadn't been taken seriously yet. Now, Sahara Online Mall was believed to be able to reach 7 to 8 billion in market value as long as it was listed. In other words, ideally, Yang Yi would be able to get 2.5 billion if he sold his 34% shares at this time. If it weren't for the fact that Yang Yi hid too deeply and the company was not listed, the media would have been amazed that Yang Yi was also a tycoon. Because of this, Yang Yi was too rich. He didn't care about the wealth that a small brokerage company could create for him. What's more, could money be compared with friendship and feelings? Yang Yi was only making money to build an amusement park for his daughter. Otherwise, why would he spend so much effort to mess with these technology companies? Therefore, if Hua Yi Brothers' company would affect his relationship with his friends and relatives, Yang Yi wouldn't allow it to exist. Seeing that Yang Yi was so serious, Guazi spread his hands helplessly and said, "Okay, Brother Yang, I understand what you mean, but I don't want to leave now." Yang Yi and Guazi were discussing Lin Mu and here. They didn't know that this taciturn big boy was brewing a big event. Micro-broadcasting's reposting of the lucky draw was very efficient. 2 days later, the list of 30 fans had been verified by Zhongqing's notary office. Mo Xiaowan also worked very hard to organize this event because this was the first big project since the establishment of Phoebe Studio. Mo Xiaowan, who wanted to show off to the people of Tianmei, of course had to plan carefully. Mo Fei was the same as Mo Xiaowan. She also participated in this event with great interest. Even the invitation letter she sent out was very unique, just like the invitation letter of the mobile phone conference in Chu Yunqing's previous life. It was a delicate small box containing a platinum album signed by Murphy and a palm-sized key that represented passage. Of course, rather than calling it a key, it was better to call it a handicraft, because it was designed by Yang Yi himself. The symmetrical tooth patterns on both sides, combined with the shape of the handle, looked exactly like the word Fei in Murphy's Chinese character. The platinum album wasn't expensive and the key was very cheap, but the signature on the album and the meaning of this key definitely made the entire invitation letter a hot steamed bun in the fan circle. Even though Phoebe Studios' official Weibo had promised to make this key into a peripheral for sale, the value of this first batch of keys couldn't be matched by the later ones, for some of the fanatical fans. The 30 fans who received the invitation could not wait to post the photos they took on Weibo. This caused many fans to be envious, jealous, and hateful. But there was nothing they could do. Who asked these 30 fans to be so lucky? The fan meeting hadn't even started yet, but there were already people who couldn't wait for Murphy to announce the second fan meeting. According to the plan, the 30 lucky fans would come to Zhongqing next weekend. Of course, they would have to pay for their own travel expenses. And they needed to have a pass, which was a key, to enter Phoebe Studios' office building. Murphy would take them to visit her and Yang Yi's studio, and then start the performance of the fan meeting in a specially decorated activity hall. Although there was still a week to go, Murphy was already in a state of excitement. Not only did she prepare the song she was going to perform, but she also thought about what topics to talk about with her fans. This was a good thing. As long as she wasn't too tired, Yang Yi felt that it was worth it to see Murphy's smile and confidence. Murphy really treated this as a concert. She couldn't sit still at home on Friday and wanted to go to the company to learn about the equipment layout of the activity hall with Mo Xiaowan and Xiao AI. After Yang Yi drove Murphy to the company, he took Shi to kindergarten. Today was also the registration day of the new semester of Springfield Kindergarten. She was going to be a little girl in the senior class. Chapter 568. Today, Springfield Kindergarten was more lively than usual. In addition to parents like Yang Yi who brought their children to sign up for the new semester, there were many other parents and children gathered downstairs to listen to the teachers introduce Springfield Kindergarten's teaching model, teaching characteristics, advantages over other kindergartens, and so on. In fact, when Yang Yi and Murphy chose a school for Shi last year, they were like these parents, holding flyers and squeezing into the crowd. However, most of the new parents signed their children up for the New Year's small class. When Yang Yi came, he directly signed Shi up for the middle class. Shi. Just as they were about to go upstairs, a small head popped out with a happy smile. Yang Yi and Shi looked up at the same time. It was young Luoqi. The little girl was wearing a big flower today, looking delicate and wild, which was quite interesting. Chi, you're here too. Shi ran up happily. Her two thin lips were smiling, her bright eyes were smiling, and her curved eyebrows were showing her joy. Shi was looking around just now, looking for familiar faces. During the long 2-month holiday, although she had a lot of fun and occasionally saw her friends, Shi still missed them. However, she saw Wang Shijuan, Wang Xiyun, and their mother. The brother and sister had finished signing up and were about to leave, so they didn't have much interaction with Shi. The two young ladies gathered together. Their angelic smiles almost filled the corridor with sunlight that couldn't be refracted in the corridor. Yang Yi and Yang Guo, who was waiting in line to sign up, chatted for a while. The topics between adults were relatively boring and not worth mentioning. After being happy for a while, young Luoqi suddenly thought of something. She pulled Shi's hand and whispered, Shi, I want to tell you something. Go ahead. When Shi spoke, the corners of her mouth were still curved, drawing a beautiful arc like a quiet crescent moon. My father and I saw a foreigner just now. When young Luochi said this, her small body shrank as if she wanted to hide behind Shi. Foreigners? She blinked her big eyes in confusion, unable to react. It's so strange. Her hair is different. Young Luochi whispered. Then my father talked to her father. Yang Yi also heard what the young lady said. He was a little surprised and asked Yang Gua, "Isn't there only a senior class on this floor? Why are there foreigners here?" "There is a transfer student today. She is a little girl from Sweden. Her father is an executive of Wall Motors. She was transferred to China this year," Yang Gua said to Yang Yi. Almost all adults in Sweden could speak English, and Yang Gua was an English professor, so it was not a problem for him to talk to foreigners. He probably talked to the other party just now. However, what were foreigners like? Young Luochi's description was not clear, and she was confused. But soon, she saw it with her own eyes. After a while, a tall middle-aged man opened the door and walked out. Yang Yi was familiar with Sweden. In his previous life, he caused a lot of trouble in Stockholm. The other party was a typical Swedish. He had blonde hair, blue eyes, and fair skin. Even his eyebrows were golden. However, perhaps because he was thinking too much, his hairline was high, and his forehead was a little bald. Behind him was a gentle and shy little girl. Although she looked a little silly, she was very tall. She was more than 1.2 meters tall. She was already taller than her peers. Even Chan Shiyun was a little shorter than her. However, compared to this little Swedish girl, she was shorter. Yang Yi estimated that this little Swedish girl was almost 1.3 meters tall. When she saw the Swedish man and the little girl, young Luochi looked as if she had seen a monster. She shrank behind Shi and couldn't help but whisper to Shi, look, her hair is different. It's weird. Shi blinked. She also looked at the foreign girl curiously. The foreign girl was embarrassed and hid behind her father's thigh. Yang, it's your turn. The middle-aged Swedish man smiled at Yang Yi and Yang Gua in a friendly manner, then said to Yang Gua. It seemed that he liked people like Yang Gua, who could speak English fluently, to communicate with him. Thank you, David. Is everything going well? Yang Gua asked in English. Yes, I registered Lu Weisha. I hope she can learn to speak Chinese in China. David patted his daughter's shoulder a little dotingly. The tall little girl hugged her father's waist. She seemed to have grown so tall in vain. She was not as unbridled as Chen Shiyun. Instead, she was very shy. This will be a big challenge. Yang Gua sighed. Chinese is not easy to learn. Yes, the teacher said so just now. She was also worried about Lu Weisha's communication. After all, Lu Weisha's English is not particularly good. David said. While David and Yang Gua were chatting, Shi and Yang Luochi also hid at the side. They looked at Lu Weisha, the foreign child, and whispered to each other. It's not weird. The hair of foreigners is different. It's not black. Shi said to Yang Luochi. The little girl had a good memory. She also told Yang Luochi about her experience. There are black people in my grandfather's house. The black uncle is very black, and his hair is a little bit curly. He. As she spoke, Cici was so happy that she started laughing. Curly. Young Luochi was a little surprised. It was difficult for her to picture such a scene in her mind. However, her curiosity had overcome her fear. On the other side, Yang Gua frowned. Then what should we do? How can she communicate with the children and teachers? It's understood. David smiled optimistically. Children's language ability is very strong. In the past, there were education experts who gathered children from different countries together. Through proper guidance and training, they could learn many languages through communication. I also believe that Lu Weisha can face such a challenge by herself and overcome it. Right? Lu Weisha? David patted Lu Weisha's little head. However, the little girl was a little depressed. She raised her head and looked at her father with her blue eyes. She whispered, "Dad, I want to go home." She was speaking in Swedish. Yang Yi felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity. He knew a little Swedish. After all, he had carried out missions in Stockholm, Malmö, Göteborg, and other cities. Of course, his Swedish was limited. It was only limited to simple daily conversations, not to mention complicated writing. "You can try, Lu Weisha." Yang Yi was a little itchy. He couldn't help but say, "Here, you can make some friends. For example, my daughter, Shi. You can be friends with her." When he said that, not only was David and Lu Weisha shocked, even Yang Yi looked at Yang Yi in surprise. Yang Gu didn't understand Swedish, but he was a language expert. He could tell that Yang Yi and the little girl spoke at the same pitch and speed. He could tell that they were speaking the same language. As for which language, was there a need to ask? Yang Yi could speak Swedish. Yang Gu didn't even know that Yang Yi could speak English. In the end, Yang Yi could speak Swedish. How could Yang Gu not be surprised? However, he was only surprised. He didn't know as much about Yang Yi as Murphy did. Naturally, he wouldn't suspect anything. It had to be said that this familiar language gave David and the little girl named Lu Weisha a very warm feeling. She even forgot to complain to her father and pestered him to go home. "Oh, you can speak Swedish? Sorry, I shouldn't have questioned you. I was just too surprised," David said happily in Swedish. "Just a little. I think it's better to speak in English. Because you speak too fast, I can't understand." Yang Yi smiled. Chapter 569. Cece's reaction to her name was still quite sensitive. When her father read out the two words, Cece, just now, Cece, who was excitedly telling her friends about the black man and the red-haired person she had seen before, suddenly stopped. She turned her head to look at her father and blinked her eyes in confusion. Young Luochi was also listening to Shi's story attentively. At this moment, she came back to her senses and looked at her father with Shi. Shi, what is your father saying? Young Luochi didn't understand. "I don't know either. My papa, what is my papa talking about? I don't understand." Shi doubted if she had heard it wrong. The two girls were whispering, but the adults were chatting happily. Because they were speaking in English, Yang Gua also joined in. They laughed and then turned to look for their daughters. Shi, come here." Yang Luochi was called over by Yang Gua, and Shi was also called over by her father. Yang Yi smiled and introduced his daughter to the little Swedish girl opposite him. No, it should be called a big sister, because Lu Weisha was older than Shi. She was 2 months away from 6 years old. However, David's idea was different from the people in China. He didn't want his children to start primary education too early. They should go to school when they were older. That would be helpful for their children's growth. Maybe. This is Lu Weisha. She and her father are from Sweden. Well, they are foreigners. She doesn't speak Chinese, and her English is not very good. Shi and the Swedish girl looked at each other as their father introduced them. The eyes of the two little girls were also filled with curiosity. Cece felt that the other girl's blue eyes were very beautiful, just like glass pearls. Lu Weisha, on the other hand, was slightly nervous. She hid behind her father's legs, but she was also sizing up Cece. It was unknown if she was wondering why this black-haired girl's hair was so long. "I don't want to. I'm scared." Yang Luochi's soft voice came from the side. Yang Yi turned his head and saw Yang Gu's helpless and somewhat embarrassed expression. It seemed that Yang Luochi was still afraid. This was the first time she had met someone whose hair and eyes were different from hers. Her first thought was to escape. Of course, it was also because Yang Luochi was a little timid. If it were Chen Shiyun, that little girl, she would probably surround Lu Weisha and look at her curiously, making her feel embarrassed. Everyone's attention was attracted. Lu Weisha saw another beautiful girl fidgeting. Although she couldn't understand Chinese, Yang Luoqi's resistance made her vaguely understand that the other party couldn't accept her. Lu Weisha couldn't tell what she was feeling at the moment, but her eyes were filled with disappointment. Fortunately, there's still Shi. Yang Yi was afraid that Yang Guo would feel awkward, so he gently patted his daughter's butt and smiled. Go and say hi to Lu Weisha. Lovey sir. Hedge. The first syllable was the fourth syllable, and the second syllable was very short. It meant hello in Swedish. Of course, if the pronunciation wasn't accurate, it might sound like a foreigner saying, mud howl. However, it wasn't hard to learn. Under everyone's gaze, she was a little hesitant. She didn't know if it was because the other party was a stranger, or because she didn't know what her father was talking about. She leaned on her father's knee and turned to look at him. She saw her father's encouraging gaze and heard her father repeat. The little girl finally mustered her courage and waved her hand at the blonde girl. She softly imitated her father. Hedge. Lovey sir. After that, she turned to look at her father. She didn't know if she said anything wrong. Yang Yi gave her a thumbs up. Actually, his pronunciation wasn't very accurate. He didn't pronounce the girl's name accurately, but the flaws couldn't obscure the beauty. She greeted the foreign child. Yang Yi was happy. However, he didn't know that in Shi's eyes, in the eyes of the little girl who had seen so many different people before, she didn't have any nationality. Lu Weisha was a stranger who was taller than her. That was all. She treated Lu Weisha the same way she treated Chen Shiyun a year ago. There was no difference. They were still strangers and didn't have any friendship. There was only the same curiosity. However, the current Shi was different from the Shi a year ago. She was a lot bolder and didn't hide from the crowd like before. Lu Weisha looked at Cici and felt the other party's kindness. Perhaps it was because she had heard the first words that she could understand between people of the same age, so she couldn't help but reveal a smile when she poked her head out. You have to respond to her too. She said hello to you. Respond to her. She's called Cici. David encouraged Lu Weisha. Lu Weisha wasn't as timid as she appeared. Perhaps it was because of the different environment. She didn't like this place and wanted to go back. However, the situation seemed to have changed. It was as if the sun had peeked out from behind the clouds after the rain. This humid world had a brand new look. The mountains and fields stretched as far as the eye could see. It made people feel relaxed and happy. The tall little sister, Lu Weisha, shyly raised her left hand and greeted Shi. Then, she said in her own language, Hedge. Cici. Lu Weisha's pronunciation was also strange, but the two girls looked at each other and smiled. Shi felt that it was fun to communicate with friends who didn't speak the same language, and Lu Weisha felt that she had a new friend from China. She was happy. Looking at their smiles, they were so beautiful that the flowers on the balcony lost their color. David was very busy. After a simple exchange, he left with his daughter. Yang Yi and Yang Guo also quickly signed up their daughters. At this time, in a hotel room near Xiongnan TV station, a man was holding a stack of things and talking to Lin Mu N. Sign it and we'll guarantee that you'll enter the top 4. We'll fully support you. Getting first place won't be a problem. The man persuaded Lin Mu N earnestly, you're a seedling with a lot of potential. We all know that your falsetto singing is very good. You should be called the best in the top 8. But you should also understand the rules. We, Mingsu Records, have invested a lot to support such a talent show. It's impossible for us to make a wedding dress for others. If you don't sign it, sorry, you can only stay in the top 8. People will only remember the person who made it to the end. I don't know you well enough now. I signed a long-term contract, so I can't take the risk. Lin Mu and shook his head. Did you sign Rong Huada or Junkie? The man's face changed. How can they be better than us? In terms of qualifications, the man tried his best to belittle the other 2 competitors who also sponsored this year's youth song competition. At the same time, He kept bragging about the strength of his own record company. Lin Mu and still shook his head. He lowered his head, so the other party couldn't see his eyes. He just whispered, "I'm here to sing, not to sign a contract with a record company." The man's face stiffened, and he said resentfully, "You're too naive. In the entertainment industry, you don't have a company to back you up. Do you really think you can go on? Or do you think that others will not sign a contract like you, and then be lucky enough to fish in troubled waters?" The man chuckled and said, "Then you really overestimate your competitors. We've already signed Enlay from the East China division, and the other two companies have probably gained a lot. Now, you're the only one who hasn't been signed yet. I think you have more potential than Enlay, so if you sign a contract, the company will give you all the resources and support you to become the champion." The man still wanted to persuade Lin Muan, but his mouth was dry, and Lin Muan was still unmoved. "Sorry." Lin Muan raised his head, and his eyes showed a sincere apology. "I'll think about it, but not now. If not now, then it'll be too late. Do you think this promise of ours is permanent? Do you think we can drag it out until you get on the stage and win the championship? Let me tell you, Shaolin, I've been optimistic about you since the regional competition, but if you still don't want to sign a contract, I can only apologize to you for this competition." The man still threw out harsh words. He waved his hand angrily and said, "I'll give you half a day to think about it. Before dinner tonight, give me a call. Otherwise, I'm sorry, even if you want to sign our contract, there's no more possibility." The man left angrily. "I'm sorry." Lin Muan sighed softly, but he didn't feel too regretful. Although the other party seemed to cherish talent, he had seen the 7-year contract, and there were too many traps in it. In the coffee shop, he often communicated with Chenli Kawonki, talking about music and their situation. From that, he knew many of the contract traps that new singers often encountered. After some time, Lin Muan's phone on the table lit up. He picked it up and glanced at it. The caller ID showed Rong Huada's manager, and a string of numbers. Lin Muan didn't hesitate and pressed it. Then, Lin Muan gently put down the phone. This phone was bought for him by his girlfriend, and Lin Muan couldn't bear to break it. Tomorrow's stage, he had to prepare well. This was a live broadcast. There was no hope of winning the championship or even the top 4, but at least he had a chance to sing on the big stage. Chapter 570. On Saturday night, the coffee shop at the corner of the street was bathed in warm yellow light, revealing a warm glow. Phew! Guazhi carried a box of beer, and 2 large bottles of orange juice on top of it. He panted as he carried it over. He bought it during the day and told Yang Yi that it was meaningless to drink coffee in such a lively scene. Ran Jin was just about to get up and help, but Wang Chao ran up and said, "Little fatty, you asked me to help you. Look at how tired you are." The two put the beer box on the ground together, and then Guazhi took 2 breaths, showed his white teeth, and laughed. He gestured with his hands and asked, "Who wants beer? Who wants drinks?" Suddenly, everyone laughed. Wang Chao, Zhu Liang, and the others waved their hands and shouted, "I want beer." "I want a beer too," Mo Shaowan said with a bright smile. She was actually very busy. Although Murphy and Yang Yi did not have much schedule, she was managing the studio and dozens of people in the company. She also had to prepare for Murphy's fan meeting and the new song to be released next month, which was the song that she had sung with Yang Yi before but had not released. Therefore, Mo Shaowan, who rarely gave herself a day off, boldly wanted to drink tonight and tomorrow. "Okay. Guests, please wait a moment." Guazhi was still acting like a waiter. He grabbed a towel and slung it over his shoulder. Then, he bent down and picked up a few bottles of beer. He eagerly handed them over, making everyone laugh. Guazhi was really a happy person. With him, Yang Yi did not have to worry that the atmosphere would become very depressing because he was not good at finding topics to talk about. However, in addition to Guazhi, there was another happy person here. She sat with her mom. She waved her hand as if she was very resistant and said, "Uncle Gua, I don't want to drink. I don't want to drink, and my papa and mom don't drink either. This is beer. It doesn't taste too much like a drink. It's very delicious." Guazi teased her. Unexpectedly, the little girl pouted and said, "Uncle Gua, you are lying to a child. I know that a ball is a ball, and then I know that beer is also wine. I heard you say that it is wine." Everyone was confused by the little girl and then came to their senses. Then, including Guazi, they could not help but laugh. Murphy could not help but smile, and then patted her daughter's little head intimately. The coffee shop was soaked in happy laughter. Laughter. When Yang Yi came back from the phone call, he was still a little confused. Wang Chao couldn't wait to tell him what had happened just now, but he didn't say it accurately. Guazi pulled him away in disgust and repeated Cici's words personally. "That's right." She pouted. She felt that everyone did not take her important discovery seriously, so she said unhappily, "Daughter, there's nothing wrong with you. You gave a good example." Yang Yi laughed and gave she a thumbs up. Only then did she giggle with her father in satisfaction. "Why did Director Chen look for you just now?" In the middle of the coffee shop, the big LCD TV was playing a long advertisement. Before the game started, Murphy asked Yang Yi. "He asked me to write the theme song for Soldier's Assault," Yang Yi said. "Did you agree?" Murphy took a sip of the orange juice that Guazi poured for her. The sour taste was very good, and it was very suitable for Murphy's current taste. She then gestured to Cici, asking her to drink some too. "I didn't want to agree," Yang Yi said. He had never watched the TV series Soldier's Assault before, so he had no idea what theme song to write for it. As for We Want to Be a Soldier, To Be Honest, and Green Flower in the Army, which he had yet to take out, these classic songs were not suitable for Soldier's Assault. The reason was simple. We Became Soldiers was too high-pitched at the beginning, and it did not fit the plot of Soldier's Assault. As for Green Flower in the Army, and To Be Honest, one of the lyrics had "Mother, don't worry," and the other had "Mother at home is already full of white hair." The mother of the main character, Su Sanduo, had passed away very early, so the lyrics did not fit the plot. Therefore, he subconsciously wanted to refuse, but just as he was about to say it, he suddenly remembered that he had read an introduction about the soundtrack of a movie that he liked. It seemed that the soundtrack of that movie had been used by Soldier's Assault. Of course, the theme song of Pirates of the Caribbean had also been used by Soldier's Assault, but Yang Yi felt that he would still need this song in the future, so he did not think about it. "What happened after that?" asked Murphy. "After that, a very grand melody suddenly appeared in my head, but it was just a blurry shadow. It was a very complicated melody, a bit like a symphony. I think it would be a good challenge if I could write it down," Yang Yi smiled and said to Murphy. It was indeed a big challenge, because the song was not simple at all. He had only heard it before, both the original version and the symphony orchestra version, so it was easy for him to find it in his memory. However, he had never looked at the score. It was not as easy to find the score as a pop music accompaniment. However, Yang Yi had been reading composition books for a while, so he had some foundation in classical music composition. Then, he was going to take the opportunity to study at a classical music school and ask some real masters for advice. He did not believe that he could not find the complete song. This was a big challenge, but Yang Yi was going to face it head-on. He was going to bring back a masterpiece from his previous life and shock this world. Every cell in his body was filled with joy and excitement. "I can't wait to hear your final result." Murphy was also someone who loved music. She could not help but move her body, feeling happy for Yang Yi. It's starting. Guazi and Wang Chao shouted, diverting Yang Yi and Murphy's attention to the television. The opening of Youth by the Song was very exciting and cool. With the host leading the way, the contestants came out from the backstage arch one by one in the midst of the fireworks on the stage. 8 handsome boys, who were dressed up by makeup artists, hairstylists, and costume designers, stood on the stage, causing waves of screams from the fangirls in the audience. They waved the light sticks and support signs in their hands with all their might. Even Lin Muin had people supporting him, but it was unknown whether they were real fans or arranged by the show's producers. The camera panned to Lin Muin, who was standing alone on the stage. The host's voice in the background kept introducing Lin Muin, but Lin Muin did not act cool like the other contestants. He was just like how he usually was. Even when Lin Muin sang in the bar before, he was just like how he usually was. Lin Muin, you can do it. Guazii raised his glass. Lin Muin, you can do it, little Lin. Yang Yi and the others also raised their glasses with smiles. Even she waved her little fist and joined in. They had gathered together today to silently support Lin Mu, and from behind. Needless to say, after more than 10 minutes, it was time for the first round of 1v1 PK. The competition format was like this. After singing the first round, 4 contestants would enter the loser's bracket. After that, not only would they have to fight their way out of the loser's bracket, but they would also have to fight their way out of the loser's bracket with the last 2 contestants left in the second round of PK. It was unknown if there was an inside story, but Enlei, who was signed by Ming Su Records, became Lin Muin's PK opponent. Before this cruel PK, do you have anything to say to your opponent? The beautifully dressed long-legged female host smiled and handed the microphone to Lin Muin, who was going to sing first, and asked. Lin Muin looked deeply at Enlei, and calmly said to the long-legged host, "Let's talk after I finish singing." Of course, Yang Yi and the others sitting in the coffee shop, including Lin Muin's girlfriend, Ran Jin, did not know the story behind this. They soon saw the song Lin Muin was going to sing in the first round. Coffee with sugar? Yang Yi was surprised to see the subtitles of the song. Choosing this song? Is this guy's brain fried? You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.